South Jersey's play-by-play home for the Eagles,
Touchdown!
Sixers, and Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill. Eagles game day. It's a Thursday edition on 97.3 ESPN FM. Yes, Eagles preseason game 2. And it's arguably maybe the most important preseason game of the entire month of August. Because remember, there's only 3 preseason games. Not 4, but 3. So this second game, you may see the most action out of Jalen Hurts and the starters on offense. Guys may be fighting for literal job opportunities tonight. This is not just going to be a bunch of kids playing in this game tonight. It's going to be guys who are either going to make or break this team for this season. After a week of joint practice with the Patriots, they got to deal with them tonight. What do the Eagles do against Belichick and the Patriots? Well, you can hear it all tonight on 97.3 ESPN FM. Coverage begins at 6:30 p.m. Josh Hennig here filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. We have you covered on all the Eagles stuff today. Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. NFL insider Adam Caplan with the latest from Eagles camp ahead of the game tonight at 4 p.m. Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press joins us coming up at 5:25 to get more into the Eagles and the big picture on the NFL preseason. Technically, it's preseason week 2. They're treating the Cowboys-Steelers game like it's week 0 in college football, which I think is hilarious. By the way, high school football in South Jersey is week 0 this year, too, which is ridiculous. That big event going on over at Ocean City High School next weekend, that's considered a week 0 event as well. So the NFL apparently is following suit. Everyone's got a week 0 now. But anyway, but seriously, tonight's going to be a big deal because you're going to find out for a lot of different players where they stand for this team, because my understanding is the last preseason game is just going to be to round out the roster. You're not going to learn a lot from that game. So, for example, we're hopeful that we get to see Devonta Smith tonight. Maybe we'll get more action out of the first team starters. And as I wrote over at 97.3 ESPN.com, if you have the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City, I gave you 4 players to watch for in tonight's game. So you would have gotten that alert if you got the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. If you missed that alert or didn't see the story yet, you can go over right now to 97.3 ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. I'll get to my 4 players I'm keeping an eye on tonight, because tonight's going to tell us a lot of different things when it comes to this team. At least when it comes to rounding out the roster. Now, one player that we likely will not see tonight is Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett was added to the injury list the other day with a shoulder issue. And the reason why it's of any significance is because of the fact that, Derek Barnett had surgery on his shoulder just a couple of years ago. And if he has to miss time at camp because of a shoulder problem, there's two ramifications for that. One side effect of that is the fact that, guess what? That's more time for the younger players. Guys like Teron Jackson, guys like Patrick Johnson, maybe Josh Sweat gets a couple extra reps in the first half of the game. We know Milton Williams has been playing tackle and D-end for the Eagles already this preseason. So there's some interesting conversation to come out of what is going on right now with the defensive line. The other thing to take away from Barnett missing time is that in many ways does to Josh Sweat what the injury to Andre Dillard did to Jordan Mailata, which is basically in some ways, hand him the win, hand him the keys. Because Josh Sweat has looked great at training camp, and he's looked great in every drill and every practice. And for a Jonathan Gannon defense, one thing we do know is that Gannon wants to bring the pressure. He's going to bring the disguises. He's going to bring the defense from multiple different angles. And if we're going to do that, you need to have as many healthy guys out there as possible. And if Derek Barnett is going to be banged up and injured this year, then maybe, just maybe, there's a possibility that he gets a little less time this year. You know, when I look at the Eagles D-line, we know what we're getting from Fletcher Cox. We know what we're getting from Javon Hargrave. We know what we're getting from Brandon Graham. We know what we're getting from Josh Sweat. But it's the rest of the depth chart that I have questions about. That's why one of the position groups I talked about when I wrote about this in 973ESPN.com that I'm keeping an eye on is the D-line, because we know there are injuries every NFL season, and you hope that there's less than there were last year's fiasco. But if you look at the Eagles right now, if you read over their official depth chart or unofficial depth chart, depending on who you ask, they currently have the starters at D end on the one side as Derek Barnett / Josh Sweat. So the plan is for both of those guys to get a significant amount of playing time. And then they have Ryan Kerrigan as the backup behind Brandon Graham. So you already have an idea of who your 4 DNs are. But right now, Kerrigan's out with that thumb surgery that he had, and Barnett's expected to miss time tonight because of a shoulder issue. So this is a perfect opportunity for some of the young guys to pick up the slack. Does Milton Williams get more snaps at the end than tackle tonight? What about Teron Jackson, the 6th-round pick? This is a guy who burst on the national scene last college football season as part of that Coastal Carolina team that shut down Zach Wilson, the high-powered BYU offense. Can he make this team? We're going to find out tonight. He's also got guys on the roster like Jaquan Bailey and Matt Leo who are trying to make some noise. And, you know, we know in the world we live in today that there's not 100% every guy who's blitzing the quarterback is a pure defensive end. And Patrick Johnson looked pretty good in the last preseason game, and he's looked pretty darn good at practices. Jannard Avery, he was injured for a bit. He's expected to maybe have a chance to play tonight. Joe Osman was moved from a D-end to a Sam linebacker in this Jonathan Gannon defense. How did those guys handle the snaps? How much, opportunity those guys get to go on the field and make an impact tonight? I'm very curious about this defense, because if the Eagles defense is anything that it's expected to be, this could be one of the better defenses in the NFL. I'm not promising you a top 5 defense, but I think the defense can certainly be better than the Cowboys, and it can be better than the Giants. I know the Giants have some good players in the secondary, but I think the Eagles have a D-line that the only front 7 that's better than them is down in Washington. And then when you look over at the secondary, okay, the Giants may have a better secondary, but I don't think Washington does, and I don't think the Cowboys do. By the way, another guy we might see tonight, speaking of the secondary, is Kevon Wallace. Kevon Wallace was chirping at Cam Newton this week at the joint practices. He's vocal. He's back. He's feeling good. But this is his 3rd defense in 3 years that Wallace has had to learn. Remember, he was at Clemson for those back-to-back national championship game appearances where they won one and lost another. So now he comes into Philadelphia being drafted last year, has to learn Jim Schwartz's defense. Schwartz is gone. Now Jonathan Gannon's here. Now Wallace has to learn Gannon's defense. There's a guy who has to figure out, Where is he in his development? Where is he up to speed? I'm very curious to see where he falls into things because Marcus Epps has played well at training camp, and he looked pretty solid last week in the preseason game. Elijah Riley had a couple big plays last week. Does he make a dent on this depth chart at safety? Andrew Adams was signed to be a special teams guy and provide you some depth at safety. What is his role going to be? So you have guys who are competing with Kevon Wallace for snaps. Not just tonight and not just next week, but for the regular season. And Wallace has to show that he is up to speed for this Eagles defense, or he's not going to get a lot of playing time. And it'll be another year of development for a guy that the Eagles took in the 4th round, in part because he was a big part of Clemson's defense that had all that success down there in South Carolina. So, again, 2 of my guys I'm keeping an eye on tonight on the defensive side of the ball are both in Philadelphia because of their collegiate experience. Teron Jackson with Coastal Carolina and Kevon Wallace at Clemson were both big names on defenses that made a reputation that got national attention. Now, can these guys make that name for themselves in the NFL? One of the things I'm keeping an eye on tonight, Eagles preseason action game 2 versus the Patriots. Coverage begins at 6:30 p.m. tonight, right here on your home for Eagles football all season long, 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you here on the Sports Bash, filling in for Mike Gill. By the way, for a little update, anybody's wondering about Mike Gill's team, they had a bit of a rain out, so their next game is tomorrow. The knockout round for them begins tomorrow. So we will keep you updated as we learn more about Mike Gill and his baseball team up there in Jamestown, New York. So Sports Bash this hour being brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. Visit them online at mattblattnissan.com. Now, the other thing we're going to touch on throughout the show today is the Phillies. Frank Klose, our Phillies insider, will join us coming up at 2:40 p.m. And the Phillies are back in action around 3:40 first pitch time tonight. And the Phillies have now lost 3 straight. They are 3.5 games behind the Braves in the division. And they brought this point up on the broadcast last night that I was watching. And I think it was Tom McCarthy who brought this up. And if it wasn't, it was somebody else. I apologize. I forget who was who. But at the beginning of the month, the Phillies were about 3 games behind the Mets on August 1st. Think about that. At the beginning of this month, they were behind the Mets in the division. Then, after their series with the Mets, the Phillies had a strong lead of the division by a couple games on August 8th. Since they had their 8-game winning streak, the Phillies have won 2, only 2 of their last 6 games. And they have now lost 2 straight to one of the worst teams in all of baseball, in the Arizona Diamondbacks. I have no idea what's going on with this team, but they better figure it out and figure it out quick. Because you can't be losing this many games if you are going to be serious about making the postseason. We've heard 100 times, look how easy the schedule is. That's all well and good. We've heard this story before. And Joe Girardi's at a loss. He doesn't seem to know what to do anymore. He is frustrated after these games. You can tell when he speaks to the media, he is not happy. And guess what? We have another lineup change for today's game. So they tried Odubel Herrera, who, by the way, hit a home run last night. Now he's out of the lineup. In center field is Luke Williams. So for the afternoon game, you have Gene Segura, JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper, Andrew McCutchen, Alec Boehm, Didi Gregorius, Ronald Torreyes, Williams, and Wheeler. So your first baseman is going to be Bohm, which is going to be an adventure. Your third baseman is going to stay Torreyes, and Luke Williams is going to center field. Now, I'm assuming they're doing this because they're trying to get Bohm's bat back into the lineup because they don't have Hoskins back yet. That's what I'm at least assuming for why they're doing this. But Girardi's trying to press buttons right now. And if you're the Phillies, you got to figure this out quick because it seems like these last few games they've lost. Again, they've lost 3 straight games. It seems like no matter what lineup they run out there, it's just not good enough. They just can't figure it out. And for a team that is supposed to be competing, contending for the division, they're not playing like it. They're playing like a team that's barely surviving each night. You've now lost 2 straight games where you only scored 2 runs. And in the series versus the Reds, who do not have a great pitching staff, okay? The Reds do not have a pitching staff that's great. They scored 11 runs in 3 games. That's not even 4 runs a game. And most of those runs were scored in their win over the Reds on Saturday. Here are the Phillies' runs scored in the 6 of the 8 games they have lost since they took the division lead on August 8th. 0 runs, 2 runs, 1 run, 4 runs, 2 runs, 2 runs. You notice the pattern? Pretty much, if they don't score runs, they can't win. In fact, you go through the schedule since the All-Star break, the Phillies have won 2 games the entire stretch when they've scored 2 runs in a game. Against the Atlanta Braves on June 25th and against the Los Angeles Dodgers on August 12th. Aside from those 2 days, they cannot win games that are that low scoring. And by the way, what those 2 games have in common, Ranger Suarez was involved in both of those wins. So, where are we at with the Phillies here? I want the Phillies to win. I know they can win. But when you watch them play, I don't even know. I mean, did the Monstars get involved? Did we steal the powers and the abilities of the players? Like in the original Space Jam movie? What's going on here? So we're going to ask Frank Klose about this coming up at 2:40 p.m. today on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Plus, our weekly conversation with Keith Smith, NBA writer, covers the NBA for Spotrac. We'll get into what does the Joel Embiid contract mean for the Sixers and also discuss with him the latest on Ben Simmons' future. Conflicting reports this week. Now, none of these reports are from, Woj or Shams, from the big name guy. So, take it with as much measured salt as you want. But apparently there's one report that says that Ben Simmons and the Sixers are going to make it work, and he's going to report to camp. And there's another report that the Sixers have re-engaged with the Timberwolves about possibly making a Ben Simmons deal, and that the Timberwolves are, and I'm quoting here, working on something big, unquote, according to friend of the show, Brendan Scoopy Robinson, NBA insider for Bally Sports. So when I look at the situation with the Ben Simmons thing, I want to know from Keith Smith, what should we expect? What should we not expect? Do we read anything in to these latest reports, or is it all still business as usual? Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Yell here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. As always, you can join the conversation, direct message the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank Seattle City. You also can chime in as you watch the show on YouTube and Twitter. Thank you for joining the show, watching us as you do each and every day at 973 ESPN on YouTube and Twitter. And, of course, the text board is there for those of you who love to chime in that way. 609-403-0973. Again on the conversation, 609-403-0973. Sports Bash being brought to you by Jenkins for heating and air conditioning installation, service and maintenance, plumbing or drain cleaning services. Call Jenkins at 609-641-6440 or visit them online at jenkinsplumbingandheating.com. Again, you can chime into the show. We'll join the conversation. Eagles back in action tonight. Phillies lose 3 straight. They're back in action this afternoon. So another Eagles game day where the Phillies game should be done by the time the Eagles play. So nice of them to coordinate with our TV watching schedules. And we will keep you updated on the Phillies as well throughout the show right here on 97.3 ESPN. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Direct message to show through 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City for the latest on the Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, and South Jersey High School sports news. All the news you need is over on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Download it for free from the Apple App Store or from Google Play. And, of course, we are live on YouTube and Twitter where you can watch the show and join the conversation there as well. Just follow at 973 ESPN.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason tonight, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
Hit under center. Back, hit, and he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
Football season is about to kick off, and that means it's time to list your football future bets on PropSwap. Did you know before the season started last year, the Buccaneers were 60-1 to win it all? Now that's a futures bet. You just never know what can happen. Or hey, maybe you do. Sports bettors cash in early and often when they list long shots on PropSwap. The average monthly seller makes $500 a month on PropSwap just posting and selling tickets. So join them by going to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot, but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig back here, Thursday edition of the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM. 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City, where you can direct message the show. Priority messaging through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. Of course, we are live on YouTube and Twitter. We'll get to the messages. We got Chris chiming in on the YouTube channel. We got a text as well to get to as well at 609-403-0973. Just to remind you, still to come on the Sports Bash, Frank Klose joins us. Talk more about the Phillies coming up in about 14 minutes from now. Keith Smith will talk Sixers and NBA with us coming up at 3:20 p.m. And, of course, we will dive deeper into the Eagles and NFL preseason week number 2. Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press covers the NFL for them, coming up at 5:25 tonight. So we got a lot of stuff to get to throughout the show, but we love to hear from you guys as well. Let's go to the messages as they came in, the order that they came in. First of all, on the text board at 609-403-0973, texter says, after watching Bohm's at bat in the 8th inning, I can't support the guy anymore. 89-mile-per-hour fastball right down the middle, and he can't catch up. Even Herrera came up next and jacked one. We need to trade him in the offseason while he still kind of has value. That's over on the text board at 609-403-0973. Well, texter, a couple things. One, Bohm is incredibly frustrating. I 100% agree with you. I don't know if trading him is really going to be the best option for you. I think part of Bohm's problem right now is, my opinion, I think that the team tried to ask too much of him too soon. I think they were hoping they could get more out of him this year, his first full year at the big league level. And instead of easing him into it, I think that's what the situation is. You look at his numbers since the All-Star break, okay? What he has done after the All-Star break so far, it's a strange set of numbers. Because when I tell you he has 1 home run and 6 RBI, you'd probably sit there and be like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, I need more from a guy who's supposed to be a slugging power hitter. But he's batting .281. So he's getting on base, but he's not getting the home runs and the RBI you would expect from a player such as him. And in the games that he's played, the Phillies are 13-11. So how much of it is him? How much of it is the batter sitting around him? I understand he is very, very perplexing right now. The problem, though, is I don't know what value he really has on the trade market. I don't really know what he can do as a trade piece. Because with a season like this year, combined with last year, it's very mixed results. And if I'm another baseball team, I don't know if I really want him or not. Listen, he's 25 years. He just turned 25. What is that? 15 days ago. It was earlier this month that he turned 25. And over the course of 153 games, he hasn't even played 162 games at Major League level yet. He's played 153 total games. He has 11 home runs, 70 RBIs, a .277 batting average. He's okay. He's all right. He's not great. He's not horrible. He's all right. Now, he's not putting up the power numbers he did last year, where he had 4 home runs in 44 games. This year he has 7 and 109, a vast difference. But he is getting the RBI. He is getting the RBI numbers up, which gives you some encouragement. And for his career so far, he is batting .274 with runners in scoring position. So I'm conflicted on him because, to me, I've said this before, Texter, I think that you need to either trade Bohm or trade Hoskins this offseason. I'm going to assume that Hoskins gets you the bigger return on investment because Hoskins is under control in a couple of years on his contract before he has to hit free agency, so arbitration eligible. Hoskins is a little older than Bohm, so he has more of a resume to work off of. You know, Hoskins has 115 home runs in his career already. And he has 3 seasons where he's hit at least 24 home runs. And last year in 41 games, he hit 10 home runs. So while Bohm hit 4 in 44 games, Hoskins hit 10 in 41 games. So to me, I think Hoskins is appealing for an American League team that's looking for a DH/first base guy. You know, I see Hoskins' potential is similar to, you know, the guys who are currently DHing in the American League. You know, your guys like your Nelson Cruz and guys like that, dudes who just hit bombs, get RBI, maybe not the greatest all-around hitters in the world, but they get the job done. So when I look at Hoskins, I think you might get better trade value for him, but I think Bohm has more potential than Hoskins. So I understand why you can't support the guy anymore, and I don't blame you at all. I just don't know what value he has as a trade piece. Even if you package him with somebody else or another prospect or something, I'm not fully sure what you get for Bohm. I think it doesn't help that you're just plugging him at first base after giving him pretty much no time at first in spring training. For their careers, JT Realmuto has more experience at first base than Alec Bohm does. But yet, who's starting at first base today? Bohm. I don't know. Like I said, I'm conflicted on Bohm. If they trade him, I'm not going to cry about it. If they keep him, I'm not going to cry about it. I see both sides of the argument in this situation when it comes to Bohm, because I believe he does have more potential than he's given. But at the same time, if he can't get the job done when you ask him to get the job done, how can you trust him? You know, you are on August 19th now. You're 3.5 games out of first place. You need your hitters to pick up the pace. And if he can't pick up the pace with the other hitters, that is a problem. Over on YouTube, watching on 97.3 ESPN on YouTube, Chris chimes in and says, the Phillies are the most frustrating team to watch in baseball. I can't argue with that point at all. I mean, that is as plain as day to me, because the Phillies have on paper the talent. Like, if you put this team into a video game, they're getting a pretty good rating, okay? You know, if you went just purely on paper, the Diamondbacks are, what, 70 in a video game, and the Phillies are like at 88? Because they got Harper, they got Realmuto, and they got Wheeler, and they got Nola, and they got Gibson, and they got Kennedy in the bullpen, and they have, McCutchen in the outfield, and they have Gene Segura, who's having a very good year overall, right? They have talent, they have hitters, they have pitching, but they're not getting it done. So you're right. They are the most frustrating team in baseball. I think Chris made a great point. And the reason why you're frustrated with them is because you know they can play better than this. You know that they are a better team than this. You don't get frustrated with a garbage team. You don't get let down by a garbage team. You don't get frustrated and annoyed and disappointed with a garbage team. You get frustrated and annoyed and disappointed with a team that should be playing better. And everybody knows they should be playing better, but they're not. And I'm not sure if they're in their own heads, if it's psychological, if it's just, they're down on themselves, they need someone to pick them up. I don't know what the issue is, but whatever the issue is, they better figure it out quick. Because this is ridiculous. You cannot win games when you have trouble scoring. Girardi said it the other night. I just don't understand how this team is stuck the way they are. I wish I had an answer. But like I said, you don't get frustrated with a team that you know is a bad team. And if you know the Phillies can play better, it's on them to pick up the pace. Because they can still win this division. I have said 100 times right here on 97.3 ESPN, I think the Phillies can win the division. But will they actually pick up the pace and start playing up the expectation? We'll ask Frank Klose coming up next, our Phillies insider for 97.3 ESPN.com right here on the other side here on 97.3 ESPN. This hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. Visit them online at mattblattnissan.com. Keep the messages coming. 609-403-0973 is text where we're also live on YouTube and Twitter. You can watch the show, join the conversation here on 97.3 ESPN. And as always, you can direct message the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
New Jersey car owners, stop what you're doing and come see AJ, the trade-in man, at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Cancel that service appointment. Let your tires go bald. Don't put another penny in that old car. The value of your current vehicle has skyrocketed, so cash in your vehicle now. Used car values are at an all-time high. Your car may be worth more than you think. New 2021 Nissan Frontier 4x4 truck. 0 due at signing. Lease $349 per month. Stuck in a loan or lease? We can get you released. We'll buy your car for cash, even if you don't buy a car from us. Worried about your credits? Don't sweat it. Get $3,000 back on every 2021 Nissan Murano and pay 0 interest for 60 months in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, or online at mattblattnissan.com. Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR based on 1667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. 36 month, 10,000 miles per year lease. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 9/6/21. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
With Indeed Instant Match, just sponsor a post and immediately receive a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on YouTube and Twitter. Talk more about the Phillies right now. Joins us here on YouTube and Twitter. You can catch the show there. Frank Klose joins us as the Phillies are lost 3 straight, and we're trying to figure out exactly what the heck is wrong with this team. And Frank joins us right now. Frank, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. You know, considering we've been staying up to watch these Phillies games and they've just been losing them. Apparently the Phillies have all of a sudden have done the opposite of Dave Dombrowski. Remember what Dave Dombrowski said over a month ago? Well, we could out-hit our pitching and our defense. Well, it seems like that assessment was wrong, and now we're looking at a team that has changed the lineup almost every day for a week.
Yeah, this offense is as bad as it's been throughout this entire season. I forget who posted it on Twitter, but I saw this 8-game stretch is the worst 8-game stretch of the season for the Phillies with an OPS in the 500s. I apologize to whoever I'm not giving credit to, but really this is bad, and I think a lot of it has to do with the injuries to their right-handed hitters in their lineup.
Now, obviously, one of the main injuries was to Hoskins, but McCutchen's back, Frank. So is it literally they're missing Hoskins' bat in the lineup, or are some of these guys just in that bad of a rut right now?
Well, I think McCutchen's back, but here's the big but for me. He didn't rehab before he came back. He came back and went right into the lineup. And as good as he was before he went out with that injury, you really need to get your timing back. And, you know, he got a hit, I think, in his first at bat. He had that 1 home run, and they got a hit last night. So he's been scuffling a little bit. You know, you need a little bit more consistency out of him. And they badly need Rhys Hoskins back as well. You know, what tends to happen, in my opinion, is when Hoskins is out, I mean, Miller's been a really great bench bat for the Phillies this year and in 2019 and on other teams in his career, but you can get overexposed, or, you know, and Miller hasn't been able to keep up. Boehm, his bat was okay, but his glove kept him out of the lineup. Now he's going to try first base again tonight, or this afternoon. We'll see how that goes. But, you know, the 3 of them were 3 key right-handed hitters that are supposed to be in that lineup, and they're supposed to be producers, and you've really kind of been without all 3 of them.
Does Girardi actually have a solution for this team's batting situation, or does he just have to ride this out? Because Girardi was clearly frustrated the other night when he was saying, look, we can't win games if we play this way.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, what can he do? I mean, these are the players he has. These are the players that have shown that they can hit in the past. And I mean, this is tough to watch, just how little you are getting out of this Phillies lineup right now. He can shuffle things around. Odubel Herrera, he's bad for several days, and he bounces down to 8th in the lineup, and he has a couple hits, and he goes back to the leadoff spot. I mean, you're right. Like every single day, he's trying something different just to try to get this thing going. And the shame of this is Bryce Harper has still remained very, very good, and as good as he's been, if nobody gets on base in front of him, doesn't really help.
Frank Klose joining us here on the Sports Bash Thursday edition on 97.3 ESPN, at Frank Klose on Twitter. Phillies coverage over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Phillies back in action, trying to end their 3-game losing streak this afternoon with Zach Wheeler on the mound. Frank, you brought up a great point. It's hard for Harper to get guys in if nobody's on base. And I heard someone tried to text me yesterday, Harper has, I think, 18 and 22 home runs or solo home runs. But I keep telling people, you're going to blame Harper if nobody in front of him gets on base? Like, what is he supposed to do? Wait for guys to get on base before he actually, what's Harper supposed to do? Get out the bat and be like, man, you know what? That pitch is right down the middle, but I'm not going to swing at it. I'm not going to hit a home run because there's nobody on base. No, we should appreciate the fact that at least somebody's getting offense for this team. Like Odubel Herrera got a home run last night. Are we going to act like Odubel Herrera? Hey, Odubel, don't hit that home run because nobody's on base. I feel like that people really got this whole idea twisted.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You need to have it'll just happen by default, right? I mean, if the more likely, the more often you have people ahead of him, the more likely he's going to drive them in. I think that's been the shame of this season. I mean, Segura was very good when he's in front of him. Even though Segura has cooled off just a little bit, his OPS is just under 800 now. By the way, McCutchen just went under 800. A lot Real Muto under 800. JT hasn't had a good stretch either right now. So, they tried batting Real Muto ahead of Harper so that they would have somebody on base. But yeah, this has been tough. I mean, I think this helps them know for next year that when they rebuild this team, and I say rebuild or retool or whatever you want to call it, but whenever it finally gets the full Dombrowski treatment in a full Dombrowski offseason, he's going to address the top of this lineup.
It's funny you mentioned Segura. The hitter he has driven in the most, who's not himself, is actually Gene Segura. 8 of his RBIs this year are just Gene Segura being driven in. Meanwhile, Alec Boehm has been the guy, and Rhys Hoskins have driven him in the most. So you could theorize that if Boehm or Hoskins are not in the lineup, if Harper does get on base, because he is top 5 in the National League in on-base percentage, if Boehm and Hoskins are not behind him, he's not getting driven in either. So this is a really difficult situation that Harper's in because he's hitting well, but if the guys around him are not doing their job, it's hard to blame him.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Alec Boehm, after what you saw last year, you thought he would be a much better offensive force, and he remains lost. In terms of his power, he's gotten some hits, but I still see his head sort of pulling off the ball a lot, and maybe that's why he's hitting a lot more singles than driving balls. But Alec Boehm has got to get it right. It has to be right at the plate if he's going to justify that glove. And being right at the plate isn't necessarily just hitting singles either, right? You need to see that power from Boehm. He was the power hitter coming up in the system. And, for every time that Harper gets on base with a walk, even, a double is what it takes to score Harper. A single, he might end up at second base, right? So there's a big difference, Alec Boehm with power, Alec Boehm without power.
Frank, the other side of this is obviously the Phillies need to hit. But do they have the right guys in the lineup? You mentioned Hoskins is injured. They're trying Boehm out there today. They're trying to play Torreyes as much as humanly possible, it seems like, because he's basically the only guy they really trust on defense. You mentioned Segura cooling off. Luke Williams is starting today in center field, which surprised me a little bit because Odubel Herrera hit a home run last night. It's like, okay, guy hit a home run, put him back out there, but I guess not. Is Girardi putting the right guys on the baseball field to hit?
Well, I think what he's clearly going for today in today's lineup is as many righties as humanly possible. And, trying to take advantage of some of the splits and the lefty-righty stuff in order to get something out of it. Now, interestingly, Odubel Herrera is actually hitting better against lefties than he is against righties, batting .260 against left-handed pitchers, versus his .245 against righties, and his OPS is about the same, whether he's hitting lefties or righties. So, I don't totally get that. I think what you might be seeing tonight this afternoon, excuse me, Alec Boehm, Luke Williams, they're getting to show the Phillies one last chance. What can you do for us? Because they're probably going to activate Rhys Hoskins and Freddie Galvis maybe as soon as tomorrow, and those could be the guys that go. Maybe this was. Let me see one more time before we decide what to do. what you can do for us before we have to make some options to the minor leagues. And I think having Galvis, having Hoskins will certainly do something for this Phillies offense. And today he's just trying to find a spark by stacking the righties, but I don't know. I can't totally explain. I can't explain a lot about Odubel Herrera, right? Because he's up and down and has his hot streaks, has his cold streaks, and they never seem to be consistent. So, but I do have a thought that maybe they want to see Bohm, they want to see Williams, because they got to find places for two offensive pieces, perhaps as soon as tomorrow.
By the way, if I'm reading Baseball Reference correctly, Frank, Bryce Harper only has 81 at bats this year with runners on base, runners in scoring position. Like, how is that even humanly possible? He has only 81 at bats with runners in scoring position. That in and of itself that's one of the most insane things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, the leadoff spot is a problem. I mean, Segura's gotten on base a lot, but guess what? Segura didn't start the season hitting up at the top of the order. That was something he had to get later, scuffling a little bit as of late. So I can see that. I mean, even Harper's missed some games himself. That brings the numbers down a little bit, but yeah, there needs to be a real reconstruction here, I think, of this lineup. And we know you're going to lose Odubel Herrera to free agency, Andrew McCutchen to free agency. You got a lot of wiggle room there just with those two positions and the money associated with those players. So I really think the Phillies have to do something really big to address that. And some of the talk about Byron Buxton being a possible trade target of the Phillies, I think that might have been the I would say pipe dream. I mean, they probably could have gotten him if they gave away the farm, but that kind of shows where they're at, and they realize they need somebody at that position, perhaps, to be somebody who can hit at the top of the lineup and get on base. And so if they're shopping in that aisle, I don't expect that shopping to end once we hit this offseason.
Going this afternoon is Zach Wheeler. Do you think Wheeler will pitch better today than he did his last start?
I think so. I mean, he's very, very consistent, and then the bad starts happen every once in a while. I think he just had a bad day, and hopefully this Arizona lineup, which has for the most part been an anemic Arizona Diamondbacks lineup, hopefully he can really keep them from scoring runs, and hopefully the Phillies score a few runs. Right? I mean that's the thing. I think what's frustrating is the last couple of games have been winnable, even with the pitching performances they've had, but the offense has just not shown up. So it'll probably come down to that again. I mean, Zach Wheeler probably will limit the Arizona offense. Like the first two games, the Arizona offense was limited. They didn't put up any crooked numbers. I don't think they're going to put up any crooked numbers against Zach Wheeler. Are the Phillies going to score?
It's a big question. We'll be watching it very closely. Again, Zach Wheeler tonight. This afternoon, final game of the series with the Diamondbacks, at least in Arizona. They'll play them again on August 26th. But after today, it doesn't get any easier. They go to San Diego for a 3-game set, a team who themselves is fighting to stay in the wild card hunt. And all the coverage will be with Frank Klose over at 97.3 ESPN.com, at Frank Klose on Twitter, and, of course, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Frank, appreciate you jumping on. And I wish we had something more positive to talk about, but when you're on a 3-game losing streak and the team apparently can't score more than 2 runs in a game, it's completely depressing, honestly.
I feel like they'll get it going in a few days. That's what this team does. They've had their downs, but then they've gotten it together, got the whole lineup back together. That seems to be what does it. So look when Rhys Hoskins gets back. I think that will make a huge difference in this Phillies offense.
Well, they said on the broadcast last night they felt like this series was reminding them of the Pirates series. So maybe today is the final game of the Pirates series and they can go on a win streak. Hopefully. I don't know, but, there's always – all you can do is hope at this point.
And by the way, don't discount – traveling out west usually takes teams a couple days to get acclimated to the schedule. So I wouldn't be shocked if they start to feel more comfortable as this goes on.
All right, Frank, good stuff. We'll catch up with you soon.
All right, have a good one, Josh.
Frank Klose, always great stuff covering the Phillies for us over at 97.3 ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. First hour of the show done. Second hour coming up. We'll get into more Eagles and NFL coming up on the show as the Eagles' second preseason game is tonight. Coverage begins at 6:30 on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, we have a weekly conversation with Keith Smith from Spotrac. covers the NBA, knows all about the salary cap and contracts. We'll ask him, what does the Joel Embiid contract extension mean for the Sixers? His perspective on a, shall we call it, very calm, rational Sixers offseason. Josh Hennig, filling for Mike Yell here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
So the dream was to build your very own law practice.
A town square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
He is hit. He stumbles. He's down.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And as always, we are live on YouTube and Twitter. Follow at 97.3 ESPN to watch the show each and every day. Sports Bash with Mike Gill. Game night with Josh Hennig. But no game night today because I'm on the Sports Bash today. Eagles football, 6:30 p.m. tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Mel Reese, Mike Quick on the call all season long in your home for Eagles football in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN. Still to come, Keith Smith, Spotrac. Keith Smith covers the NBA for Spotrac. He's a capologist, contracts expert. What does the Joel Embiid contract mean? We'll ask Keith Smith coming up here on 97.3 ESPN about that. By the way, while we were talking with Frank, a little Phillies news did come down that's of interest to, I think, some people at least. Zach Eflin will begin his rehab assignment at AA Reading on Saturday. So at least some pitching reinforcements are on the way for the Phillies, even though, as we talked with Frank, the pitching right now is not the problem, it's the hitting. And we're still waiting to find out exactly when Rhys Hoskins is going to return from his injury, because as Frank laid out, it seems like when Hoskins is not in the lineup, this team really suffers. And it has to make you wonder. We talked about a little bit earlier in the show because somebody messaged in they're so frustrated with Alec Boehm. And, you have to wonder, is the success of this lineup so dependent on Rhys Hoskins' availability that he's too valuable to give up on? I don't know if that's the answer or not, but it's just something to think about, and maybe Alec Boehm is expendable. Maybe Alec Boehm is showing that he is not, as important of a prospect as we thought. Alec Boehm, I think he has very good potential. And my only concern with him is, what are you going to do, right? If you trade Boehm, you got to replace him at third base with somebody, right? Andrew McCutchen could be a free agent this offseason. Who do you replace him in left field with? We talk about center field. They need a center fielder whose name is not Odubel Herrera, Luke Williams, Nick Maton, Roman Quinn, Adam Hazley. So this offseason, the Phillies have a lot of questions to answer. They have a lot of things to figure out. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what their plan is. I'm trying to figure out what exactly their plan is going forward. And the reason why I say I'm trying to figure that out is because, when I look at the Phillies, if you're not able to be successful with the team as currently constructed, you got to make changes. And I'm not fully sure 100% where the change has come from, but it's got to come from somewhere. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and we'll be keeping an eye on what the Phillies do. Start play today at 3:40 p.m. is first pitch scheduled. And as the Phillies game goes along, we will keep you updated on that front right here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Eagles football tonight. Adam Caplan football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, coming up at 4 p.m. Rob Maaddi, Associated Press NFL reporter, joins us coming up at 5:25 tonight on 97.3 ESPN. You can catch my players to watch for tonight's game right now at 97.3ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. I give you 4 players to keep an eye on, 2 on the offense, 2 on the defense, because we all know who's going to make this team, but I think we're still wondering, are there certain players who might not make this team long term? We may assume certain guys are going to make the team, but considering the way joint practices have gone this week, considering the fact that they've already moved on from Kerryon Johnson, this roster is way more set and locked in than we realize. So, if I am a team like the Eagles, I have certain positions I'm keeping an eye on. I'm looking at wide receiver. I'm looking at defensive end. I'm looking at safety. I'm looking at, the linebacker depth. We know who the starters are for the Eagles, but tonight we're going to find out a little bit more about how good those starters can be and who should make the team in terms of depth. Of course, you can always chime into the show. 609-403-0973 is text board. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. Comment on the stream on YouTube, Twitter, and you can message the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Priority messaging thanks to First Bank of Sea City. A couple of news items I wanted to hit on with you guys that have kind of come down the pipeline today. And one of them is, by the way, Devonta Smith is expected to play tonight. That just came down as well. So we hope to see Devonta Smith in the game tonight. That'll be a big part of this team's ability to evaluate who and what they are moving forward. So, but yes, Devonta Smith is expected to play tonight. And remember, Brandon Brooks played last week. So if Brandon Brooks played last week, you kind of have to wonder, how many guys get to play tonight? Because this is not the Doug Peterson era where they're ambiguous with the injuries. They're pretty straightforward so far with the injuries. There's no ambiguity. There's no, and if maybe he's going on. It seems like Nick Sirianni's much more upfront when it comes to the injury situation. So guess what? Devonta Smith practiced this week. He's playing. Unlike last year when you had guys practicing all week and then all of a sudden they'd be ruled out for game day. So if nothing else, Sirianni is a refreshing change of pace, to say the least. But one of the things that came down is, and it's a little bit of an under the radar national story. So Nielsen came down with some information about television and streaming viewership. Okay. And the reason why this is something to keep an eye on is because if you remember, we had these conversations during the pandemic about what people are watching, how they're watching, how sports impacts their, what they do and don't watch, right? And the reason why I want to bring this up is because Nielsen just came down with a breakdown of people who are, what they are watching. And it comes down to this, basically, that of all the people who are turning on a television or some sort of device to watch in their homes, all right, the majority of people are still consuming their content through either cable or dish. It comes down to 62% of all viewership is still on either their cable or a dish. In fact, 38% of all television viewing is on cable. 24% of television viewers are streaming. Now, 28% are streaming. So 24 are dish, 38 are cable, 28 are streaming. And the reason why this is something to keep an eye on is because in our world of sports, we know how teams like the Phillies have tried to force us to watch Peacock, right? We've had people trying to tell us, well, you got to watch this Phillies game on Peacock and nowhere else. Or you got to watch this game on YouTube and it's not anywhere else. Or this game is on Facebook and it's not anywhere else. But the numbers are telling us that despite the fact that all of these entities are trying to force us to move our viewership habits somewhere else, that a large majority of people are still consuming their viewership on either cable or dish. And it's not something that just happened recently. This is a system that Nielsen developed that they've been running for months now. They've been trying to measure out exactly where and how people are watching things. And the number of people watching cable has been pretty consistent. And the number of people watching on dish is pretty consistent. It's a 1% difference from one month to month. That is not a big difference. So this idea that people are streaming more than ever or they're watching stuff digitally, it's really not true. And in fact, when you break down the streaming numbers, you realize that 6% of the 28% of streaming is on YouTube. So people like Mike Gill, who's watching games potentially on YouTube TV, they only equal 6% of the pie potentially. Hulu, by the way, is at 3% of the streaming people. So Hulu also has live sports you can watch, live TV you can watch on Hulu. So if you take Hulu and YouTube and assume that a part of those people who are using those platforms are watching either YouTube TV or Hulu live, that means 9%. 9% is a low number, okay? So in the grand scheme of things, what are people watching? They are watching their content on the traditional platforms. And I have to think moving forward, this is going to be a problem for a lot of people because these streaming services like your Disney Plus, your Paramount Plus, your Peacock, your Amazon Prime Video, your Disney Plus, your Netflix, your Roku, your Sling TV, this is a bad day for them. Because how many times have you wanted to watch during the Olympics the basketball? We all wanted to watch it, and you couldn't find it, and it was on Peacock. Well, guess what? These numbers prove that you, the consumer, didn't watch the Olympics because you couldn't find it. This proves the exact thing we've been saying right here on 97.3 ESPN, that when you make things inconvenient for people, you can't force people to change everything that they do. You, the sports consumer, wants to be able to flip on your TV, turn on your device, and find what you want. There were an entire month that I'll pull up right now. I would pull up the My Team's NBC Sports app, right? And because the Olympics were going on, they never gave me an option to watch the Phillies on the app. Now, I haven't pulled up the app since I went through this. Okay, so the Phillies are now available on the app. And so are all the other NBC Sports networks. I can watch the PGA Tour. I can watch the Northern Trust. I can watch La Liga if I wanted to. Oh, that's fancy. I can watch a replay of Pro Football Talk. But all these things were not available during the Olympics. They were forcing us to have to watch the Olympics on the app. So if you were someone who wanted to stream the Phillies, unless you had YouTube TV or a Hulu Live Sports subscription, you were locked out streaming-wise of the Phillies. But now, as you can see on the app, and I'll put it up on the screen for those of you watching on the stream, the Phillies are the first option because I am in this area. So as a result, these streaming services are so desperate to gain viewers and subscribers that they literally have now alienated part of the viewership. Now, just to be clear, they do not have ESPN Plus listed as one of the details. I'm trying to figure out if I can get the ESPN Plus numbers from Nielsen while I'm sitting here, because I think that would help me understand a little bit more of these numbers. No, they're not giving me the ESPN Plus numbers. So the ESPN Plus number must have been so small that it just didn't register, because they have Disney Plus at 2%, Amazon Prime at 2%, Hulu at 3%, YouTube TV at 6%, Netflix at 7%, and then all other streaming are at 8%. Now, there is a 10% on this, just for full clarity. There is a 10% number that tells you that could be like your Roku, your Sling TVs, the things that don't actually count as a streaming service, but that count as a carrier service that is not either cable or Dish Network or Direct TV, right? So that is something to keep in mind. I don't know what the ESPN Plus numbers, but for ESPN Plus not to even show up on this list probably is a problem. Peacock is not even showing up on this list. Paramount Plus is not showing up on this list. HBO Max is not on this list. No, the streaming services that people are watching in the largest number are Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video, and Disney Plus. You got to wonder, all this rush to force people to streaming, to force people to watch things, maybe it's not as popular as we thought. Maybe the numbers are not reflecting the fact that this is working out the way they thought it would. We'll ask Keith Smith about that a little bit coming up as well on the other side, as well as Joel Embiid signs a contract extension. What does it mean? We'll find out from him coming up next, and we'll talk more Eagles as well coming up on the Sports Bash. Adam Caplan, NFL Insider Football at 4. Rob Maaddi, Associated Press NFL reporter, joining us coming up at 5:25. All that's still right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. This hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by JCPenney. Stock up on 3 days of big savings for back to school at JCPenney. Shop smart and score huge savings on doorbusters all day, Friday through Sunday, while they last. Weekdays are back in style at JCPenney. Keep the messages coming in. 609-403-0973 is the text board. We're also live on YouTube and Twitter, where you can join the conversation on the stream. And, of course, priority messaging through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City.
We never stop talking Eagles and NFL. It's football at 4. Every day at 4 p.m. on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. We always appreciate you guys joining the conversation as we do get to your thoughts a little bit later this hour. But joining us right now, as does each and every week here on 97.3 ESPN, Keith Smith, NBA contributor for Spotrac, as the Joel Embiid contract is signed. He has a new max contract, but what does it even mean? And, of course, we all have the latest and new rumors. I don't even know who to believe half the time with the Sixers offseason, and Keith Smith joins us right now on 97.3 ESPN. Keith, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Just sitting in the car line to do school pickup, so it's all good.
So, Keith, Joel Embiid signs the contract, but what does it mean? Like, people see numbers and they're like, wow, it's a lot of money, but what does it even mean? So, give the audience an understanding, because you understand these contracts better than anybody. What does this stuff really mean? What does the Joel Embiid contract extension say to you?
Yeah, I think this time compared to the last time, it says more so than ever that Joel Embiid is our franchise player. We are building everything that we do around him for at least the next 4 to 5 years. Those final year or two, we know how that goes a lot of times in those contracts. Those guys don't finish it out with the same team, but we'll see. The Embiid's in a little bit of a different place as a younger player than some of those other guys who signed. So I think what the Sixers are saying here is there's no non-guarantees with injury protection like there were in the last contract time. There's no easy outs for anybody. It is Joel Embiid's our guy. We're building around him. We're going to give him the most money possible to keep him home here and happy here in Philadelphia, and let's go forward.
When you think about the Sixers offseason, and I don't say this to be mean, but I'm just, kind of laying it out there, it feels a very, matter-of-fact offseason, right? Like, you had to re-sign Danny Green. Well, you had to replace Dwight Howard, so you brought in Drummond. You signed Gorgeous Niang because you needed a legitimate backup power forward behind Tobias. You're going to give Joel Embiid a contract extension. You brought back Korkmaz. There's nothing the Sixers have done that is really it's really inspiring, Keith. Is that potentially a problem, or is that to be expected?
Yeah, I think it's so much of what they're doing is held up on whatever happens with Ben Simmons. And I think independent of that, they did a pretty good job. Like you said, some of these things are a little bit more of a no-brainer. You had to re-sign Danny Green. You had to re-sign Korkmaz. But sometimes when you have to do those things, you end up being forced into an overpay, and it ends up not a great deal. Well, in this case, they got great deals for those guys. Those guys are on really good contracts. And I am far from the biggest Andre Drummond fan in the world, but Andre Drummond on a minimum as your backup center, that's perfectly fine. You're not going to get hurt by that. And then I think the Niang contract is fantastic. I think he's actually going to help them a lot as a passer and a ball mover in that group there for them. So I really like that move. But it's one of those things where until the Simmons situation is resolved one way or another, either it's resolved because he's coming back or it's resolved via a trade, everything feels like it's still kind of on hold.
So let's touch on that Simmons stuff because you opened the door, Keith. I feel like this week has been just conflicting reports. You have some people saying that, Simmons is coming to camp and the Sixers are going to make it work. And other reports are saying that the Sixers are still trying to ship him out of town as soon as possible. And now we have the rumors, depending on who you want to believe, that the Timberwolves are working on something big, whatever that means. So, what do you think of this Ben Simmons situation with all the information we have right now?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where we still don't know exactly what's going to happen with that situation. There's a lot of different reports out there that are, let's call it at best, questionable. Are they really, doing this or are they doing that? How is it going to work with this? I think it is one of those things where for Ben Simmons, Philadelphia reportedly has asked for the moon, and it is that I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's the way to do it. I think you do ask for everything under the sun because I think that makes the most sense. I think you start high and then you can always come back down. But the problem is no one is really even willing to start with the, hey, we're not close, but what do you think about here? It sounds like other teams are still trying to lowball. So I've never gotten the sense that anything is particularly close. And it sounds like some of the teams that are maybe more interested, like the Minnesota Timberwolves, they don't have the value to provide direct to Philadelphia for what they're looking for. So that involves finding a third team to get in. That makes it more difficult. So I'm starting to think that we're going to be in about 3-4 weeks here looking at a really awkward situation that involves Ben Simmons showing up at the facility for the first day of training camp and everybody being like, hey, Ben, good to see you. Let's go.
So are the Sixers playing their hands right then? Like, are they doing this the right way? Because there's a lot of people who say out there, you don't want to just give up Ben for like a bunch of pieces. Like you need to make the team better if you're going to move on from him. You don't want to just get some random dudes in return.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I get it. We're all kind of down on Ben Simmons right now because our last images of him passing up a wide open shot at the rim and not taking it. And that's on top of missing other shots and not taking other shots and those kind of things. But I think that's almost clouded our judgment too much that we're forgetting this is the most versatile defensive player in the entire NBA. Nobody guards 1 through 5 like Ben Simmons does. We say it about a lot of guys, but he actually does it. So I think we're also overlooking this guy is a tremendous passer. He is, in a lot of ways, like an old school point guard, despite the fact that he's 6'10". So I think what we're ultimately having to reconcile here is, no, they should not just give him away. They should not just go get some random guys. It hasn't hit that point. Now, if 4 weeks from now you start getting signs of, hey, I'm not showing up, or I'm going to come in and it's not going to be pretty, then your whole kind of trade calculus changes because then you have to do what's right for the team. And that may mean, all right, we're not going to get the best package, but we can't have this coming in here and undermining our entire season and turning it into a mess because the guy really doesn't want to be here.
Keith Smith joining us here on 97.3 ESPN at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter, contributor for Spotrac. Joins us each and every week here in the 3 o'clock hour on 97.3 ESPN. So I know every Sixer fan who has social media or at least has the ability to Photoshop or can find the picture has put out the picture of Damian Lillard, right? There's a group of people out there who still think that Bradley Beal is going to get traded, right? But Keith, is this a situation where potentially the Sixers are waiting for something that may never happen? Is there a possibility that Daryl Morey and the Sixers are waiting for a star to become available, and that star may not come available anytime soon?
It's certainly possible. I would say with the Bradley Beal situation, and I cover the Celtics as one of the teams that I'm on the beat for, and Celtics fans have been clamoring for Bradley Beal basically since they learned he's one of Jason Tatum's best friends. And there are a lot of them who are convinced, well, that's just going to happen, despite the fact that Bradley Beal at every turn has said, I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to stay here in Washington. I want to win here. I want to turn it around with the Wizards. So that one, I am starting to put it in my mind of just get that out of your head. I think he's sticking there in Washington and not going anywhere. Lillard is continuing to send some mixed messages. Now, he has never said the magic words of I want to trade. And if he does, the Trailblazers are everybody estimating, belief and prediction, whatever it is that they will do their best to move him because he has meant so much to the franchise and been so important. But until he actually says that, they're not going to do that. Now, he has said, when asked about their offseason moves while he was still in Tokyo with Team USA, yeah, we didn't do a whole lot. We didn't get the guys we wanted. So that's not really inspiring confidence. But if Philly's just sitting and banking on a trade of one of those two guys, that would be a mistake because, as you said, they may never come to fruition. But I don't believe that's Daryl Morey's deal here. I don't think that's what he's doing. I think he's going to continue to wait till he gets what he feels like is the best deal, knowing, hey, I still have a really good player here. And if it ultimately turns out that the best deal is for Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal or somebody else, well, then so be it. That just, happens to be the way it works out.
Keith, shifting away from the Sixers specifically, I want to ask you about something that just came out today. So for those out there who don't know, I talked about this before you came on. Nielsen has been checking where people are watching their television content from. And I think for some people in the media industry, the numbers may actually surprise them because we're finding out that it's over 62% of people are still watching on cable and dish, whereas it's only 28% are streaming and it's 10% other, to the point where if you take out YouTube and Hulu, Keith, that streaming goes all the way down to 20%. So is there a potential that, maybe some of these media outlets maybe overestimated where their audiences are getting their content from? Because if over 60% are still watching on traditional platforms, doesn't that say that maybe the rush to things like ESPN Plus and Hulu as live sports may have jumped the gun a little bit?
It's certainly possible. I think in the case of the NBA, they have been fighting the battle since the bubble when they were told by so many that no one is watching anymore because the players kneeled and they spoke out on social justice issues. And ESPN, ABC, TNT, along with the NBA, have been saying it's not true. Our numbers are good. Part of why people weren't watching was because in the bubble, games were being played on a Tuesday afternoon at 2:30 when people were at work. Even if they weren't physically at their office, they were still working. So, but if you compared when they cut those out and compared it just to the traditional television windows, the numbers were really good. The numbers this past season continue to be really strong and good. And I think if you're the NBA, who in 2 years knows, hey, we've got a TV contract coming up, and there have been estimates by the people who know what they're talking about with this stuff saying the NBA is going to double their TV contract, which is going to lead to the salary cap spiking again. There's going to be a new CBA about a year or so in advance of that TV contract. So what we're going to see is everybody's going to be making a lot more money. Now, I think they're looking at it and saying, hey, the one thing people still are keeping TV for, this guy particularly that's talking to you right now, Josh, and myself, I have DirecTV solely because of live sports, because everybody that I know that has switched to streaming, all they spend their time doing, especially with the NBA, is complaining about how the online-only version of League Pass stinks, and they run into all these issues and all that. I will not give up DirecTV until that all stabilizes and figures itself out. I also think personally, I can't tell you how many friends of mine are like, oh, I cut the cord because cable was too expensive. But then you find out they have 14 streaming services that they pay more than they did for cable for. So I think this is one where it's gone too far with people saying nobody watches things live on cable anymore. They stream it or they illegally download or whatever it is. I think it's pretty clear a lot of people are still watching in the traditional methods.
Well, you and me are part of the 62% who are still watching on the traditional method. By the way, for those who are wondering, 65% of people who are streaming, Keith, have a household income over $100,000 a year. So, maybe there's something to be said for the fact that the streaming people are the people who can actually afford it, like you said, and it's not the average regular consumer. And we know the majority of sports fans are the average Joe more than the wealthy Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just look at, some of the people I know that are, their thing is they have the cable because they've still got young kids that are watching, Disney and Nickelodeon and all those things. They don't want to have, 22, devices in their house hooked up through iPads and phones and all this stuff. And like in our house, we have ESPN Plus and Disney Plus and those things. We have those in addition to cable. And I bet if you dug deep into it for sports fans specifically, you would find that's probably more people than not. It's just those people are not the ones who are online all the time screaming and yelling about how nobody watches cable anymore because they're sitting down and they're watching cable. They're not sitting there tweeting while they're also, streaming a game on their iPad.
Well, listen, Keith, all I know is I had trouble finding every single basketball game in the Olympics. So they kept pushing it on the Peacock. And I know a lot of people, they just don't want to make the jump. They feel like if it's not on the channels on their lineup, they shouldn't have to go find an app to watch these things because at the end of the day, people consume sports differently than other things. Listen, on this streaming thing, 2% of streamers are Disney Plus, 2% are Amazon Prime Video, but 3% are Hulu and 6% are YouTube. So, even with the streaming people, the number is so low and it has to make you wonder, when you see the huge numbers are coming out for the NFL and for the SEC when it comes to television contracts, and now with the NHL going back to ESPN, you have to wonder, is the sports world going to start taking attention to the fact that maybe their consumer audience is not as digital as they thought?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is you'll get, hey, you want to watch it on ESPN? Great. You want to watch it on ESPN Plus on your phone or your tablet or your laptop? That's fine too. We got you covered there. However you want to do it. So I think what they're going to do is they're just going to expand it out. I think you're absolutely right. I think the Olympics were horribly botched. I was, beyond frustrated with trying to find anything. It was like you couldn't just find stuff to watch. And I know they were in a tough spot with the time difference and those kind of things. That's, in this day and age, it's impossible to have a 12-hour delay between when an event happened and then in the evening without finding out who won. It doesn't work that way. You're going to see it somehow. But I do feel like, I was like, all right, what channel is, this event on? Oh, that's only on Peacock. And then I was like, oh, but it's on Peacock paid versus the free Peacock and those kind of things. I also think about like I think about my parents who are, they're going to sit down. My dad does not want to have to log into something, do 4 other things to then go find the football game he wants to watch. He wants to turn the TV on, flip to one of the, 4 or 5 channels he thinks it might be on, and then he's going to watch it. He doesn't want to have to do, a login and 12 other things to find the game.
Keith, any of us who ever worked in customer service remember the old axiom, the customer is always right? So to me, I keep falling back on that. All my years of working in the the jobs that people don't get appreciated for, and we're always told the customer's right. The customer's right. Well, maybe the sports and their network's going to have to fall in line with that as well. At Keith Smith NBA on Twitter, you check out all of his work over at Spotrac, and of course he joins us each week on the Sports Bash Talk NBA and more right here on 97.3 ESPN. Keith, always appreciate the time and the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, a conversation with Keith Smith, being brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Visit them online at eastcoastroofing.com. We'll get back to your messages coming up next. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Priority messaging through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks, First Bank of Seattle City. We are live on YouTube and Twitter, where you can join the conversation as well there. Just follow at 973 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig. filling in for Mike Gill here on a Thursday edition of The Bash.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason tonight, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
Hit under center. Back, hit, and he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station. Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. You can watch the show, join the conversation as always. I want to remind you this hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by JCPenney. Stock up on 3 days of big savings for back to school at JCPenney. Shop smart and score huge savings on doorbusters all day long, Friday through Sunday while they last. Weekdays are back in style at JCPenney. Get some of your messages here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Text board is open as always, 609-403-0973. direct messaging available through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And, of course, we are live on YouTube and Twitter. We'll go deeper into the Eagles game tonight. Eagles preseason game number 2 tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 6:30 p.m. with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick on the call. Right around 7:20 here on your home for Eagles football, 97.3 ESPN here in South Jersey. So we get a little bit of a little back and forth going on the YouTube feed, which I always enjoy when the listeners start having a conversation with each other. But this one didn't really go as far as I hoped. I hope it might go a little further than this. But Rich chimes in, and I don't know what I said at 3:03 p.m. that instigated this message, but Rich says the Eagles may win 4 games this year. 4 minutes later, Tony chimes in and says, Rich, would you like to put some money on that? I'll take over 4 on the wins. And the conversation really went nowhere. So I was a little disappointed that it didn't go any further than that. But I wanted to talk about it because of the fact that I still think there is a contingent of Eagle fans out there who are convinced, whether it is through their own personal opinion or because they are blindly listening to certain NFL analysts, that believe that this Eagles team is as bad, if not worse, than last year's team. And I would love an explanation from the listeners as to why they think that. So if you're someone who thinks that the Eagles, like Rich who messaged into the show, may only win 4 games this year, or you see the Eagles over-under is 6.5, and you're saying, I'm taking the under, let me know. Because I would love to hear the rationalization. I'm not here to put you down, but I want to understand, because it seems like that you who think the Eagles are still a 4-win team and me are looking at 2 completely different football teams. So the text board is there, 609-403-0973. You can message the show directly through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You can also message into the show like Rich did on the stream, where he says the Eagles may only win 4 games. Now, obviously, Tony disagrees with him. So Tony is closer to my opinion than Rich's. But like I said, the over-under for the Eagles is 6.5 this year. Now, 2 things to keep in mind. Number 1, 17-game schedule. So you have 1 more game to play in the regular season than you did last year. The other thing to keep in mind is the Eagles are one of the teams with an easier schedule because they technically have what is known as a last place schedule. So they are not playing the caliber of teams that some other teams have to play this year. So 6.5, over, under. Where do you stand? And I want to know why. Don't just tell me yes or no. Because if we're going to have a conversation about this stuff, and instead of just being demonstrative like Rich on YouTube says, Eagles may win 4 games this year. Well, why? You throw it out there. You give us no rationalization. Tony, responds to you about it. You say nothing back. All right. I want to know, where do you stand on the Eagles over-under? Tell me why. 609-403-0973 is the text board. You can message the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on YouTube and Twitter. You can watch the show and join the conversation there as well. And here's my position. And I have said this multiple times since the over-under came out. My position is this team is a 7 to 8 win team. Because number 1, Carson Wentz's turnovers, he himself, in my opinion, probably lost you 3 games because of his poor play last year. All right, you go through the Eagles' schedule last year. The first game of the year, you could have won it if it wasn't for the multitude of turnovers in the second half, and then the defense just couldn't stop anything. The Bengals game probably isn't tied if Carson Wentz doesn't throw that just abominable interception that he was staring down Zach Ertz for like 5 seconds, and then he threw the ball right to Cincinnati's defense. So You have one game that's not a loss, one game that wouldn't have been a tie that goes in the win column, in my opinion. All right? And then the other game that they lost with Carson Wentz at the helm that I think theoretically could have been a winnable game when you look back on it. And again, this stuff is debatable because there's a lot of what ifs involved. There's a lot of subjectivity going into this. But, I look at a game for the Eagles last year, for example, like the Steelers game. The Steelers game, yeah, you lost 38-29, but at halftime, you had the lead. It was you were down by 3. It was 17-14. So it's not like you were being blown out the entire game. You had to play catch up. No, you were down by 3 at halftime. But in that game, Carson Wentz threw 2 interceptions. And one of the interceptions was completely inexcusable. It was completely and utterly horrible. Now, if you want to also bang on Doug for only running the ball basically 12 runs between Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, you can bang on him for that. Maybe Doug's play calling didn't help. The defense didn't do their job in that game. But I think there were 3 games last year the Eagles could have won. And there could have been 3 games put into the win column, which means you would have won 7 games. Now, on top of that, you had the most injuries on the offensive line in the NFL. You had the most offensive line combinations in the NFL last year. You had everyone injured at some point on that line. And you were getting even the backups who were getting injured. Guys like Jack Driscoll, who played well, then he got injured. Andre Dillard missed, all that time last year because he was injured in training camp. You had to ask Jason Peters to play right guard and then move him to left tackle, then move him back to guard and then say, JP's injured, never mind. So I think the injuries had a huge factor in the season last year. So I think if you have a quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over like Wentz did last year, and if you have a team in general that just is not as injured as last year, to me it's very simple. 4 plus 3 equals 7. And that's over 6.5. And again, I'm not saying this team is going to win the division. I'm not saying this team is going to contend for a Super Bowl. But I think this team, as currently constructed, is better than 4 wins. I think they are just a better team than that. And like I said, as a result, I tend to take the position. Whether it's, you disagree, let me know. I'm taking over 6.5. You disagree? Tell me why. Priority messaging through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of CLC. We are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. And of course, text board is there, 609-403-0973. Coming up on the other side, Adam Caplan. Football at 4. Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. He will join us to talk more about the Eagles. Preseason game number 2 is tonight. You can hear all the action with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick right here on your home for Eagles football in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill, hanging out with you on a Thursday afternoon. Hope you're all having a great day. At Josh Hennig on Twitter if you want to talk when we are not on the air. Back with more next.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
South Jersey's home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
I am the voice of the voiceless.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. 97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan.
I have real confidence that our football operations can once again create a dominant football team.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 on Eagles Game Day, preseason game number 2. Of course, you can hear all the action tonight, 6:30 right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Your home for Eagles football in South Jersey. To get more into what you should expect to see in tonight's game is the one and the only NFL insider Adam Caplan joins us here on 97.3 ESPN. We got a lot to get to with him in just a short amount of time. Adam, how you doing today?
Josh, good. I am actually at Panthers training camp in South Carolina, so I'm glad to be here with you all. I'm getting ready to watch the game tonight, like most people in the area. The only game, by the way, tonight in preseason.
Yeah, I know it's going to be also shown on NFL Network all over the place. I know they're talking about it this morning on Good Morning Football. By the way, while you're down there, say hello to Colin Thompson if you get a chance.
You know, I saw him. I could not get over to him. I don't know if you know this. You probably know this. He does a podcast.
Yes.
And he interviews his teammates after practice. It was actually really interesting. I'm like, wait a minute, is that Colin Thompson? And someone said, yeah, that's him. So I wish I could have gotten over to him, but with the COVID protocols, we can't get too close to the players.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to tonight's game. But also, it's also cool to be here to see the Ravens. By the way, the Ravens were in town with the Panthers.
Very nice. Well, Adam, we got a lot of stuff to get to with another Birds team, the Eagles, because you guys inside the Birds talked about this. You know, there's some injuries with tonight's game, and particularly I want to start with the injuries. You have Barnett with the shoulder, Kerrigan with the thumb. As a result of that, Adam, who do you think will actually get to see tonight? Because those are two guys who, if they were healthy, you would assume they would get at least a certain amount of reps.
Yeah, so what will happen is, as far as Kerrigan, I don't know what his status is for the game because he hasn't practiced fully in several weeks because of this thumb injury, which turned out to be a little bit more significant than they thought. So right tonight, what you'll see is I don't think you're going to see a lot of Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat. They don't need to play very much. The guys who need to play and they need to get evaluations are on Teron Jackson, the 6th-round pick, is open. Samaj Jaquan Bailey is an undrafted free agent from Iowa State, who probably more for the practice squad. Milton Williams, who really has come on lately. He's been a really good story, playing more inside than outside. You'll see him. And then the other D tackles, Raekwon Williams, Tui Pelotu, we've not heard a lot about, and Hassan Ridgeway. The middle of the second quarter and on to the end of the game, that's the time when you get a better evaluation of these younger players who they need tape on.
You mentioned the evaluation. Explain to the audience, I was talking about this a little bit earlier, about how this is the difference between the practice and the games, where the coaches really get that game tape on these guys, because you need that game tape to really evaluate if what they did in practice translates into a real game setting.
Right. So, Josh, what happens is, for instance, let's say we have the controlled practices on Monday and Tuesday with the Patriots, right? those are, when I say they're controlled, you may only get, in terms of what we call team practice, where they're in pads but not hitting because they don't hit. The Eagles don't hit. But those might be 5 or 6 minutes at a clip. Well, here, guys like Raekwon Williams might play the second half 30 minutes. So you can get way more time. Plus, you're going to get more physical play because they're actually going to be tackling to the ground. That's something they're not getting in practice. That's why it's very important for these younger players to get tape, and then they could get a harder evaluation. And also, too, for these guys who aren't going to make it, every team gets the tape of tonight's game, so they'll be able to see what these guys look like on tape.
Staying on the defense real quick, Adam, who do you expect to play tonight at the linebacker position?
Yeah, so Jannard Avery, he was able to work some this week. I don't know if they'll put him in there. Joe Osman has a concussion, so I wouldn't expect to see him. Davion Taylor, we know, is not playing. Jacoby Stevens, I saw his hamstring wrap, so I would not expect him to play. Sean Bradley should play a lot of snaps. Patrick Johnson, who for that backup Sam linebacker job, he should play a lot. TJ Edwards should get a decent amount of snaps, who's their top backup linebacker. Those are the guys I would expect to play a lot tonight.
Over in the secondary, Adam, Kayvon Wallace, he was famous or infamous, depending on who you ask, for being chatty with Cam Newton at practice this week. But does that mean we'll actually get to see him in the game tonight, you think?
Yeah, he had a long-term injury. Now, I know he started working back this week in limited fashion. I don't know that we'll see him tonight, but the guys at safety who are going to get reps, Graylin Arnold is back, so he should get in there. I would expect Elijah Riley should get a lot of snaps. Marcus Epps should get snaps. Andrew Adams should get snaps. At corner, Michael Jaquette should get a ton of snaps. Josiah Scott should get a ton of snaps. Kevon Seymour should get a lot of snaps. Lavert Hill, and also Blake Countess is back for like his fourth time. Original Eagle draft in 2016 in the 6th round. He could return kicks, and he's a backup safety. Those are the kind of guys you'll see in the secondary.
Now, we saw last week that certain guys definitely played better than others last week. What do you think are some of the guys who tonight might be more important for than the others that you talked about?
Well, the guys who want to build, like Zach McPherson, okay, that's one guy I didn't mention. That's one guy that has had a very good training camp, but was just so-so last week. He needs to build upon that. Milton Williams, I mentioned earlier, we could talk about him a little bit more in an expanded fashion, where they could play him inside and outside of tackle and outside of DN, particularly when Graham and Sweat aren't playing. I don't know that I don't expect Barnett to play tonight, but remember, sometimes the Eagles, if a guy like Brandon Brooks he had an injury, a hamstring injury going into the game, but he did get some work in. Then they played him 5 snaps. So with Barnett, if his shoulder is good enough to play, he could play one series. But the bottom line is Milton Williams should play a lot, at least a quarter and a half. And you want to see him now because he did really well the last week or so in practice. You want to see him expand on that. And now against a different offensive line, a different offensive line, guys that you're not going to see because they're from the AFC. You like to see these guys get good work in.
Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, at Caplan NFL on Twitter. The latest edition of the Inside Birds podcast dropped this morning for an even deeper analysis into the Eagles game tonight versus the Patriots. You mentioned Milton Williams. Adam, I'm curious your thoughts on this. We know that he's a guy they're playing on the inside and the outside. If he's someone that can keep growing and evolving and developing as they hope he can, are we talking about a guy that we're going to see a lot of this regular season?
Yeah, I could see Josh, if they feel that he's ready, I could see him being the 3rd or 4th D tackle. That could wind up being 15 to 20 snaps per game inside. Depending on where Ryan Kerrigan by the start of the season is with his thumb. If Kerrigan's not ready to play, they could have Williams there. I don't know with Kerrigan what exactly his status is. We'll learn more tonight and obviously for our show on Monday. But Williams shows that positional versatility. I would say, by the way, he's a little bit ahead of schedule of where I think they expected. They knew from tape study what he brings to the table, but remember, he played at a lower level of college football. And when you're playing at Louisiana Tech, you're not going to be the most developed player. That's kind of what the think around the league was. And plus, they need to figure out what his weight should be. Remember, he was a little bit undersized to play inside. And he's been a breath of fresh air, and he's got a great attitude. What we've heard is very coachable. And he's doing a little bit better than probably people expected, and he's got a chance to answer your question, and it's a good one. He has a chance to play a little bit more than we all expected.
Adam, let's flip over to the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, if you listen to anybody who's not just the Inside the Birds podcast, everybody and their cousin has been saying Jalen Hurts, Jalen Reagor, good week at practice. But Adam, what do we expect to see from them in game action? Because we know Reagor, as you guys have pointed out on the pod, the inconsistency is a problem for him.
Yeah, and you'd like to see, because he had a very good week. He's probably his best week as an Eagle in terms of practice. You go back to last year's training camp when I was there the day when he reached on an interception, tried to tackle, and he suffered a sprained shoulder, and then obviously we remember he got hurt again. He had he broke his wrist. So it was just, I don't want to say it was a lost season. It just didn't have the kind of season they wanted. Had a really good offseason in terms of OTAs and their one-on-ones. He's been a great one-on-one player. And then in team this week, he did very well. Did have a couple drops, but overall, he had a really good week. You want to see him build on that. Devontae Smith, if all goes well tonight, warming up, hopefully he'll play. Travis Fulgham has not had a good training camp. He's been very up and down. He needs to straighten himself out. Quez Watkins, he needs to continue this last 2 weeks. Really, his best 2 weeks as an Eagle. He, quite frankly, had done very little up to this. I kind of laugh when people are saying he's going to start. There's no chance of that. I don't know where that's coming from. It's never been a discussion. It's just that he's a rotational deep threat. That's a coaching term. He has a specific role when he comes in the game. You're going to see him run deeper routes. He's not there to catch possession routes, folks. He is a playmaker downfield. And J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who's quietly had a decent camp. Those are the guys who I would expect to see and given a chance to get the job done tonight.
You mentioned about Fulgham having a quiet camp. He had no targets even in the game last week at all. And this is a guy, we all talk about the 5 games he had last year, but it seems like this year he has fallen off. Is he in trouble of maybe not even being on this team?
Jeff, I posed that question to Jeff Mosher, or my broadcast partner, and we both seem to agree that he should make the team. They're not in position because they just don't have any veterans. They're one of 2 NFL teams not to have a vested veteran on the roster. They can't afford not to have him on the roster. Plus, he could run. He's got size. There's a term that coaches use. He gets in his own way. He just has concentration lapses. He just needs to be more consistent with his approach. There is a reason, Josh. Let's not forget he's been cut 3 times. Once with the Packers, where the Eagles cleaned off waivers, and twice with the Lions. The Lions coaching staff were told did not want him on the roster anymore. They punted. They asked the front office to get rid of him. They did. And now, as you know, he went to the Packers and now the Eagles. So there's a reason, despite the talent over that 4-game stretch last season, there's a reason why coach is sour on him. He's got to get himself together here.
Nick Sirianni said this week, Adam, that he likes to get the young players in to get as many reps as possible because he wants to prepare them for the season. So you mentioned Devonta Smith. What does that mean for him and the other young receivers tonight, you think?
Yeah, I have no idea how many snaps Smith will play if he does it all. It's just a matter of how he feels. Now, I'm told he had a grade 1 MCL sprain. That's a minor injury. They knew it when they got the testing back that it wasn't going to be very long. And he was actually, I think, after the first week doing really well. He might have, I'm not sure if he was running after 1 week, but I know he was moving pretty well. And I'm a little bit surprised that he's got a chance to play tonight. I would think they would wait until next week, being that he didn't practice fully this week. But he did. So let's put it this way. He did enough to show that he's ready to play. But do they really need to do it? That remains to be seen. But nevertheless, the rotation, if Smith plays, you're looking at Reagor, Smith, Fulgham, then Watkins. And then obviously Greg Ward is an inside receiver. They have 4 outside receivers: Reagor, Smith, Watkins, and Fulgham. Reagor and Smith will also see time on the inside. Every now and then, Watkins will line up as a vertical slot because he can do that. And we know Watkins still, though, is that guy. He's going to be that home run hitter. In fact, one Eagles source said to me that if Watkins could continue just to build on what he's done, he could give him those big plays that Deshaun Jackson could never not give him very much because he was just not on the field due to injury.
Adam Caplan joining us, NFL Insider at Caplan NFL on Twitter. Of course, the Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning for even deeper details on the Eagles game tonight. Adam, how about the guy throwing the ball to the receivers? Jalen Hurts, good week at practice overall. How much do we expect to see from him tonight?
Yeah, barring something unforeseen, I would say into the second quarter, because what'll happen is it just sounds like, I talked to an NFL general manager over the last week. He thinks that his starters will play a half in the third game, and that's it. Because this team that I'm talking about has had these joint practices, which they're kind of like mini games. So you don't have the need to play these guys 3 quarters or 4 quarters in the preseason in a game. So I would expect in the second quarter with the asterisk where if Hurts comes lights out, if he tears it up after 2 series, why play him? If a coach sees what he wants to see, hopes to see, why take the risk? You don't need to do it. It's just a matter of, like last week, okay, he was 3 of 7 with 2 drops. One was a bad drop by Ertz. It was right. He put it right on him. The other one was a low throw. It was not an accurate throw, but Rager should have caught it. It was too low. I think Hurts would admit that it was not an accurate throw, but you know what? Still a catchable ball. The Ertz throw was great. The Goddard throw was tremendous. That was a big-time NFL throw. He just missed Watkins for that bomb, that 90-yard pass, the 90-yard catch and run, what it would have been, but it was just a little off. Those things happen, but it's good to try those things out in the preseason just to get your timing down.
And we also know that according to NFL Next Gen stats, he was blitzed on 6 of the 7 pass attempts that he had, and one of them was a throwaway. And exactly. I know you and Jeff talked about on the podcast about people need to remember that this guy, he's thrown the ball away a good amount to avoid sacks, and the importance of that in an offense and not put yourself behind.
Yeah, and Josh, one other thing, if we're going to be fair, when you evaluate players, you have to evaluate everything, and you have to look at the whole body of work. The reason why Alex Smith struggled so much with the Niners early in his career, too many offensive coordinators, too many coaching changes. Well, Jalen Hurts now is in his 4th offense in 4 years. That's a factor. That's why, and then plus, remember, no 7-on-7s, no 11-on-11s, no teamwork in the offseason. All his teamwork is coming in training camp. So, and plus, obviously, the game action. So you can't expect him to be ahead of schedule. I think we need to be fair when we evaluate him. I think some of the criticism has just been way overboard here. And by the way, Monday, we should mention, we detailed all this on our show today, which you can get on YouTube, by the way, and on any podcast platform you can download. But just give you 10 seconds of it. Monday was his best practices in any training camp last year, this year. He just threw it with authority. It wasn't just the accuracy. It was the timing that he got it out of his hand. The timing, folks, sometimes is lost on evaluators. Timing with quarterbacks and receivers and pass targets is super important.
All more details on the Inside the Birds podcast. The full recap you guys will have at InsideTheBirds.com. And Andrew Checo is up there covering for the game you guys tonight. And, of course, Monday, the full round of the weekend. And all together, Adam Caplan, Jeff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. Subscribe, download, and make sure you catch all that great information with the guys. Adam, appreciate you jumping on today, and enjoy Panthers camp.
All right, Josh, thank you.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, of course, the 4 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash, being brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the PropSwap app today. So you heard a lot of different names there, and we will get a little feedback from you guys, your thoughts on the Eagles as well. But I got to get to, we mentioned a couple names I talked about in my article over at 973ESPN.com. And I just want to review those names for you guys. You guys can react to the guys that we're talking about here on 97.3 ESPN, players to watch for in the game tonight. And, you know, I laid out the 2 receivers that we just mentioned there with Adam. You know, Jalen Rager is a guy who had an incredible week, right? He had a great week at camp. He looked really, really good. But being a guy who has these great moments is not good enough in the NFL. So you want to see him bounce back from having a drop pass last week. And he did in the game when he had that big game for 13 yards in the second quarter. I want to see more from Rager. I know the talent is there. I know the ability is there. I know he can do more than what we've seen in games. And we saw some of it in practice this week. And as Adam mentioned, you know, these games are where you get game tape. This is where the coaches can say, all right, the guy did this in practice, but he couldn't do this in a game. where it's not a controlled setting. Again, remember, these practices are controlled environments. You only can gauge so much from a practice because remember, if a quarterback is making a pass, he might not be doing it against a blitz. He might not be doing it in an adverse situation. A wide receiver, he maybe not is getting bumped on the line of scrimmage, or maybe he's not being distracted by everything that's going on around him. There's so many variables go into an NFL game. And so the game itself for Reagor tonight, to me, we're going to learn about who he is, because you can have all the great practice time you want. And the one-handed catch was amazing. You can see the catch over at 97.3 ESPN.com. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you don't play that way in the game. We saw Reagor at TCU be an offensive weapon. We saw the Eagles do a little bit with him last year. The question is, can he do it moving forward? The other offensive guy that I'm keeping an eye on tonight, as I wrote about over at 97.3 ESPN.com, Travis Fulgham. This is a guy who's been completely invisible. Barely heard anything about him in 2 weeks of camp, and now we're in week 3 of Eagles training camp. No targets last week in the game. And every time I've seen any video of him, it's of Nick Sirianni coaching him up. It's not of him making a great play. It's not of him doing anything special or unique. It's him basically being coached up. And I think that's a problem. I think that the coaching staff knows there's more in him. They know he can do more. But is he the guy who had 435 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns in a 5-game stretch last year? Or is he the guy who disappears for quarters at a time? Because I understand the Eagles don't have a lot of receivers, but it doesn't mean they can't pick up a veteran receiver along the way. It doesn't mean that they can't pick up whoever, gets cut from somebody else's team, or maybe they traded Ertz or a Dillard or somebody else before the season and they acquire somebody else's veteran receiver. And by the way, Fulgham is going to turn 26 next month. He's not young anymore. He's really straddling that line between being a young up-and-coming player and becoming a veteran receiver in this league. So, to me, this is an important game, an important camp for him, because he can't put up or shut up tonight. I don't know if he makes this team. Now, flipping over to the defense, you heard Adam mention one of the guys I'm keeping an eye on, Teron Jackson. And for those who don't know, Teron Jackson is a guy who was drafted in many ways because of what happened last year. Because people were not allowed to do the traditional scouting and the evaluation, a guy like Teron Jackson, you're judging him off of game tape more than anything else. And he was on a defense last year that became famous because Coastal Carolina became the Cinderella of college football season. And when they went against BYU in a game that, for all intents and purposes, was not supposed to happen, okay? This was 2 of the biggest non-Power 5 schools going head-to-head in college football, 2 undefeated teams. And BYU is an offense averaging like 48, 47 points a game with the guy who went to the Jets, second overall pick, Zach Wilson. And they held them to not even a third of that in this game. And part of it was guys like Teron Jackson just harassing Zach Wilson all night long. So guys like Jackson, they played so well in that great marquee game nationally that people started paying attention more and more to Coastal Carolina and a guy who had 18 sacks over 2 seasons. Last week's game, he had a great tackle for a loss. You can see the video right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. And he had another play where he forced the play to maybe go a little off timing, and they had to change up a little bit what they were going to do. But he also had another play where he ran the wrong direction. So you can have a couple good plays, a couple not so good plays. What are the Eagles looking for in the coaching staff? We're going to find out tonight. This coaching staff knows who they already have as starters. Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett are the defensive ends with Ryan Kerrigan, right? You know your D tackles as starters are Fletcher Cox and Milton Williams. I'm sorry, Milton Williams is the backup. Javon Hargrave. And we know Milton Williams has played very well in camp. He could be inside. He could be outside. And depending on who you ask, if you ask the guys at the Inside the Birds podcast, if you ask another Eagles analyst or reporter, they're going to tell you that basically the other backup D tackle comes down to Hassan Ridgeway and T.Y. McGill. So, you're not going to keep a ton of guys on the D tackle because of what Milton Williams can do. Teron Jackson needs to establish himself. Marlon Tuipulotu needs to establish himself, the interior D lineman from USC. These are two guys who were drafted later in the draft who the Eagles were trying to grab for depth purposes. Can those guys make an impact in the game tonight to show that they deserve to be on the roster? One game is not enough. How many times have we seen a player have one good preseason game and then he gets cut later in training camp? Hello, Paul Turner, right? So for the Eagles coaching staff, they need to see something from Teron Jackson tonight. The other guy I'm watching for tonight is Kevon Wallace. I think Kevon Wallace needs to get on the field this preseason. He missed time last year due to a little bit of injury and the fact that he was behind because he didn't have a traditional offseason. All those rookies last year did not have the traditional offseason. And going from the Clemson defense to Jim Schwartz defense, it took some learning for him. It took some development. And he's a guy who was known in college as a aggressive tackler, a guy who has a great motor, excellent pursuit. He's relentless, but his coverage skills is what needed development at the NFL level. And when you miss time in training camp this year, learning your third defense of the last 3 years. Remember, he was at Clemson just 3 years ago. Last year, he was in Jim Schwartz's defense. This year, he's in Jonathan Gannon's defense. So he's learning a new defense. This is the second straight year that he's going to miss preseason time games. You hope he gets in the game tonight. If he gets in the game tonight, I want to see how much time he gets. How does he handle the speed of the game? How is he going to handle these situations in this defense? Because if Rodney McLeod is not ready to start the year, which there are some signs pointing to that he might not start the year, what happens to the secondary? Marcus Epps has played well in camp. He performed well in the first preseason game. So the assumption right now is Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps are your safeties. Where does Kevon Wallace land into that? Does he become your primary backup? Or does he not perform well enough tonight and the rest of camp? Because he was real chatty. He was real talkative at camp this week, chatting it up with Cam Newton to the fact where he was even trying to call out plays before they even happened. And he got a couple of those plays right in camp. So he has the intelligence. He has the physical ability. But can he translate that into gameplay? That's what we need to find out tonight. Eagles, Patriots, preseason game 2 tonight. Coverage begins at 6:30 right here on 97.3 ESPN. Again, this hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the PropSwap app today. You can tell us what you think about the Eagles game tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. Text board is 609-403-0973. Priority messaging through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And you can chime in on the stream at 973 ESPN where you can watch the show. I asked you guys earlier in the show, Eagles 6.5 over under. What do you think and why? Someone earlier in the show messaged in, he thinks the Eagles may win 4 games. Do you say more than 6.5, less than 6.5? That is the over under in Vegas right now. Over under 6.5 and why? Let me know. I gave you my explanation a little bit earlier why I think it's over 6.5. You can tell me why you think it might be under or over, and we can have that conversation right here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN FM. The text board is 609-403-0973. The 97.3 ESPN mobile app is free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Download the app, message the show directly through the app as well. And, of course, we are live on YouTube and Twitter with all your messages on the other side right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason tonight, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
Hit under center. Back. Hit. And he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station. Back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live on YouTube. It's where you watch the show. Join the conversation. Live here in the Matt Blatt Kia studios. Right, Matt Blatt Kia, They want to get you approved today at Matt Black Kia on the Black Horton Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. As promised, we will get to some of your messages coming in on all the platforms you can get a hold of the show. Don't forget priority messaging through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Just download the app, message the show, get all the latest news and analysis on the Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers, and high school sports news right there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Right now, it is a nothing game between the Phillies and the Diamondbacks in the bottom of the fourth. So we have a pitcher's duel going on right now between Wheeler and Bumgarner. Not really much to write home about. Both pitchers are just pitching very, very well, even though, just as I said, that Wheeler just gave up a opposite way hit that just squeezed fair down the third baseline from the left-handed hitter Peralta. So Wheeler right now is working with a man on base, but overall, Wheeler has 49 pitches in almost 4 innings. He's on fire right now. If you were wondering if the last game that he pitched versus the Reds was an anomaly or not, this game has proven it, I think, so far. Really, really good game for Wheeler right now. So definitely good stuff from him. And the Phillies, again, tied nothing. Bottom of the fourth. 2 outs right now. Man on second base, though, for the Diamondbacks. As I promised, I'll get to all your messages here. Of course, the text board is 609-403-0973. As always, we are live on YouTube and Twitter as the Diamondbacks scored on a looping base hit. So now it's 1-0 Arizona, which could be the beginning of the end for the Phillies because they've only scored 2 runs in every game this series. So they are an absolute mess. A couple messages that have been coming in throughout the show. I want to get to them here. Kyle Dubray chimes in, says, Milton Williams and Kyle Pitts will have the best careers coming out of this draft. I think that Milton Williams, Kyle says, is Aaron Donald Jr. A couple things before. First of all, I mean, if he ends up being anything like Aaron Donald, I mean, the Eagles will be ecstatic. The problem for Milton Williams is that he didn't have the kind of college career that Aaron Donald did. People don't realize that when Aaron Donald was in college at Pittsburgh, he was a guy who, the only reason why he wasn't drafted higher was because of the reality that his size. Back then they were still holding guys' size against them. But in reality, he had a really, really good college career. You're talking about a guy who had 66 tackles for loss in his college career. 66 tackles for loss. He had 2 11-sack seasons at Pitt, did Aaron Donald. He wasn't good. He was incredible. And he won numerous awards, the Bronco Nagurski Award, the Chuck Bednarik Award, the John Outland Award winner, the Vince Lombardi Award. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He led all of college football, Division I, in tackles for loss one year with 29. Just think about that for a minute. What on earth? The numbers he was putting up are ridiculous, but because he was only 6 foot and 280, I don't know if he played defensive tackle. So to compare that to Milton Williams is aggressive, in my opinion. Milton Williams only had 2 full seasons in college, whereas Aaron Donald had 3.5 full seasons. All right, you're talking about a guy who had some monster numbers, comparing him to a guy who was 3rd in Conference USA in tackles for loss one year with 10. One guy had 19 tackles for loss over 2 seasons in Milton Williams. Aaron Donald had 28.5 in 1 season. I appreciate your belief in Milton Williams, Kyle Dubray, But the numbers in the game tape says that Milton Williams and Aaron Donald are just different players. And by the way, Milton Williams is 3 inches taller than Aaron Donald. He weighs about 5 more pounds than him in college. And by the way, Aaron Donald was a first-round pick, 13th overall. He would have gone higher if it wasn't for his size, they said. Milton Williams was a third-round pick. Listen, I like Milton Williams. I think Milton Williams could be a very good impact player for this team. And maybe if he develops, he can become an even better player, once they, evolve the defense. But comparing him to Aaron Donald is very, very lofty praise. I appreciate the insight, Kyle, but I think the evidence says that maybe Milton Williams can't be that good. And Kyle follows up and says, my point was they tested out exactly the same at almost the same size. But again, they're not the same size. Williams is 3 inches taller. And technically about 5 more pounds, at least in college, than Donald was. I think that if you want to compare Milton Williams to somebody, I think that Donald wouldn't be the guy I would compare him to. Because again, Donald put up freak numbers in college. He was a freak every day of his life. The moment he walked on the Pittsburgh's campus, they knew that they had something special in him. Milton Williams, he had to earn his way into the lineup. By the way, he started as a defensive end who they eventually moved in the inside at Louisiana Tech. Donald was always an elite interior D lineman. So I understand that, you look at a guy like Milton Williams and you think he could be very good. And I think he'd be very good too. I think that you're looking at a guy, Milton Williams, who eventually he might be the starter one day on the interior D line. But Aaron Donald might be a bit of a stretch, Kyle. But I appreciate your faith in him. A couple more messages coming in. We'll get to those on YouTube in a minute, but over on the text board, 609-403-0973. Nick from Brigantine chimes in and says, Josh, I like 10 wins for the Eagles. It's because I have high hopes. I've got to have high hopes. I think there's 4 wins in the division, and there's 6 outside the division. That's from Nick of Brigantine. All right, that's interesting. So let's break that down. First of all, I think your hopes are a little higher than mine, but I appreciate the optimism. I like it. I like the fact that you're being, you're willing to take it that far, okay? Me, I'm not willing to take it that far. Like I said, I think this is like an 8-win team. That's my personal opinion. Now, you say that there's 4 wins in the division and there's 6 outside. All right. So let's look at the schedule. Let's look at the games outside the division. You got at Atlanta first week of the season. That's a winnable game. San Francisco, I don't think it's a winnable game. Kansas City, I don't think it's a winnable game. At the Carolina Panthers, that's a winnable game. Home against Tampa, probably a loss. At the Las Vegas Raiders, that's a winnable game. At the Detroit Lions, that's a winnable game. Home against the Chargers, because it's at home, I think it'd be a winnable game. At Denver, that's a winnable game. Home against New Orleans, maybe. Because it's at home, I think there's a chance there. And then you got, let's see here. At the Jets, definitely a winnable game. And then the rest of the schedule is teams in your division after the bye. Their bye week is week 14, a really late bye for them. I mean, that's ridiculous. All right, so here's the thing, Nick from Brigantine. I don't think your idea of 6 wins outside the division is that crazy. Now that I look at the schedule, I see about 7 winnable games. So you getting to that number 10, I don't think is that extreme. I think that there are a couple games in there that I personally would maybe think, okay, well, I don't know if they can win that game, but, I at least think they have hope, right? So, when I look at the Eagles' schedule, I don't see 10 wins, but hey, Knicks going way over the 6.5. And listen, if you think the Eagles can win more than 6.5, there might be some money to be made there. Maybe, this is the 4 o'clock hour being brought to you by PropSwap. Maybe you go find an alternate win line, right? Let me go look at my buddies over at FanDuel Sportsbook. What are the alternate win totals? Because Nick's saying 10 wins. I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that, but let's see here. Let's go to NFL alternate win totals. Here we go. Philadelphia Eagles. Here we go. All right. So if you think the Eagles can win over 7.5 is plus 130, over 8.5 is 180. So what I would say is, if you do think that the Eagles can get around 9-10 wins, then over 7.5 is not a crazy number. Plus 130 or plus 180 on the 8.5. So you go to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. You go to Atlantic City. You get that future on the over Eagle wins. You post it on the site. You wait for the bids to come in. And then if you think the Eagles can get off to a good start this year, because like I said, the problem with the Eagles schedule, as I said, is it's like it's speckled, right? It's one of those things where it's like, I don't think they can beat Kansas City or Tampa, even though both of those games are at home. San Francisco is hard to beat. So you have 3 games in your first 6 that I don't know if that are winnable. But once you get past those first 6 weeks, things even out, because Detroit, Denver, Jets, those are 3 games that you should win. You have the Chargers and the Saints coming to Philadelphia. Definitely you might, even if you're not favored to win those games, you should at least be close win margins. Maybe you're +3, +2 underdog in that situation. So listen, I think that if you are looking at the 6.5 and you want to take the over, I don't think it's that crazy. Jeff Bonampuki chimes in and asks, you think we might see Devonta Smith during the preseason? I do, Jeff, because I mentioned it earlier. Nick Sirianni says that he wants the young players in the preseason. He wants them to get reps, get real game preseason experience. And there's a report out there right now. Here it is from NBC Sports Philadelphia that Devonta Smith is expected to play tonight. So if you're expected to play, and remember, we didn't even think Brandon Brooks was going to play last week. If Devonta Smith is expected to play tonight, then I think there's a possibility you actually might see him tonight. I don't know what they're doing with the third preseason game. I think the third preseason game is completely dependent on what happens tonight. If they get all the game tape they want from the guys tonight, then I think that it's a dress rehearsal for a quarter and a half, and then they bail, and they just play all young players after that. So I think that tonight it might be the most likely night you see Devonta Smith. At worst, you might see him next week. But I think there's a good possibility, because like I said, the head coach said himself, he wants young players to get reps in the offense in the preseason. So if that's what the head coach says, I tend to believe what he says. Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live on YouTube and Twitter. Just follow at 973 ESPN. Message the show through 973 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You also can message the show while you watch the show on YouTube and Twitter. And, of course, text support is there as well, like Nick and Brigantine did, 609-403-0973. By the way, Kyle Dubre follows him, says, if I'm right about Milton Williams, then you got to give me my own show on your platform. He ends it with LOL, which is very appropriate, because I don't have the power to give anybody a show on this station. I am not the program director. I had to earn my own opportunity to be on the air here on 97.3 ESPN. So, and being right about one player, I don't think is a prerequisite for you to get a show. If it was, I would have had a show a long time ago, because I've been writing about a bunch of stuff and nobody remembers it, but yet people only want to remember like the one or two things I got grossly wrong. And by the way, I'm probably one of the only show hosts, maybe like if there's 400 people who talk sports on radio and TV and on podcasts, I'm one of 10 who actually admits that they're ever wrong about anything. I tell you right here on the radio, I'll be like, look, I told you this was going to happen, and this is where I was wrong, and this is why. So, listen, if you're right and I'm wrong, I'm looking forward to it, because I hope Milt Williams turns out to be an amazing player. Josh Hennig, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
It's back to school, and at Matt Blatt Kia, our math is easy. Put zero down, make zero payments for 90 days, or pay 0% financing for 60 months on every new 2022 Kia Stinger and Sportage in stock. Plus, we need your trade. We'll even buy it for cash. Even if you don't buy a Kia from us, used car values are at an all-time high. Your car may be worth more than you think. Worried about your credit? Forget it. We finance your future, not your past. All new 2021 Kia Niro EXEV with zero due in signing and zero security deposit. Lease just $275 per month. It's basic math. Zero down, zero payments, or zero interest for 60 months.
Gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 and 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 for 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into new loan. Niro 36-month lease, 10,000 miles per year. Excludes taxes, title, license, and document. Offers don't combine. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 9/6/2021.
Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
And now on Route 37 in Toms River.
live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Finish up the 4 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And as always, we are live on YouTube and Twitter this hour, Sports Bash, being brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the PropSwap app today. Don't forget, still to come on the show, Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press will join the show. Coming up at 5:25, getting on the conversation about the Eagles NFL Preseason Week 2. I mentioned earlier to Adam Caplan. So tonight's Eagles game with Scott Graham, and I believe it's Ross Tucker, who does the color on the call, is actually going to be the national NFL Network preseason game. So it's not just be seen in our area or in New England. No, it's going to be seen all over the country. And by the way, if you missed Scott Graham, he was on Philly Schweim and with Pete Thompson in the locker room this past Sunday. A lot of fun that interview was. Very, very cool interview. Listen, I'll admit it. I think Scott Graham's one of the best. I think he's completely underrated. I wish he was still doing baseball, but now he's the NFL Films voice, and he's all over Westwood One. You can hear him right here on 97.3 ESPN all football season on Westwood One for the NFL coverage. I'm Josh Hennig. More next.
It's back to school, and at Matt Blatt Kia, our math is easy. Put zero down, make zero payments for 90 days, or pay 0% financing for 60 months on every new 2022 Kia Stinger and Sportage in stock. Plus, we need your trade. We'll even buy it for cash, even if you don't buy a Kia from us. Used car values are at an all-time high. Your car may be worth more than you think. Worried about your credit? Forget it. We finance your future, not your past. All new 2021 Kia Niro EXEV with zero due at signing and zero security deposit. Lease just $275 per month. It's basic math. Zero down, zero payments, or zero interest for 60 months.
Gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 and 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into new loan. Niro 36-month lease, 10,000 miles per year. Excludes taxes, title, license, and dock fee. Offers don't combine. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 9/6/2021.
Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
And now on Route 37 in Toms River.
South Jersey's home for the Sixers and Flyers.
Yeah! He scored! A two-hand jam!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill, the 5 o'clock hour of the Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on YouTube and Twitter. You can consume the show multiple ways. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app for the latest analysis for the Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers, and all the local high school sports coverage, including Tom Ferracco stepping down as the head coach of boys basketball at Middle Township. My 4 players to watch in tonight's Eagles preseason game. The latest on the Phillies from Frank Klose. Analysis of the 76ers, Flyers, all that and more right there on 97.3 ESPN.com. But you can get to the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Download it for free. Thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. Apple App Store, Google Play, wherever you get your apps from, it's right there in the App Store. This hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Delaware Valley Acura Dealers. For great deals on Acura's award-winning lineup, shop online at DelValAcuraDealers.com. Still to come this hour, Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press will join us to talk more about the NFL and the Eagles at 5:25 tonight. Of course, we always love to hear from you guys as well, watching out there the show, consuming all of what we're doing today. It's been a busy show. Of course, Eagles football tonight at 6:30 on 97.3 ESPN. Phillies are currently in action out in Arizona. They are still currently losing, as of this moment, 1-0. Despite the score, Zach Wheeler has pitched phenomenally well. But the Phillies have gotten one hit, and the other 2 times they've got on base, it's because they had a guy hit by the pitch and another guy walk. That's how pathetic of a night it's been. Bumgarner has pitched like the superstar that he used to be. You know what I mean? I don't think Bumgarner is as elite as he used to be, but I think going up against a Phillies team that's completely out of whack offensively, he's just dominated them. Getting them the ground out, strike out, just all over the place. He just pitched great. Wheeler's pitched great too, but he gave up 1 run. Apparently, the Phillies can't even score more than 2 in this series. So we'll see if they can turn that around as they are batting right now in the top of the 6th, down 1-0. Bumgarner very efficient as he gets Segura to ground out. 68 pitches so far in this game. That's it. So Phillies just struggling to find a way in this game. Pretty poor situation for them. Also, throughout the show, we've been taking your comments. Earlier in the show, somebody commented, I sent in a message that said that they thought that the Eagles were only going to win 4 games this year. And apparently, a lot of people disagree with that, whether that be Tony on YouTube, whether that be a bunch of people messaging in. We got Nick from Brigantine. We've got Terry from Galloway says he's already put $100 on Eagles to win the division at plus 600. Woo! Wow. I mean, that's a ticket that you're going to want to make some decisions about, because if the Eagles are actually in a position to win the division, you may want to prop swap that. I'm just saying. That's one of those tickets that you might need to consider if you want to keep that or not. Maybe you prop swap that, get a big payout on it, take the payout money and invest it back into getting another ticket, kind of thing. I'm just saying, don't miss out on an opportunity to make some money off of that with prop swap, Terry from Galloway. That's a fat ticket right there. I mean, I don't think it's out of the question that the Phillies can win the division the Eagles can win the division because, one, I don't think the NFC East is a really strong division per se. I think that when you look at this division. All right. First of all, I can't take the Cowboys seriously because on Hard Knocks, they look like the most boring team on planet Earth. So I don't even know if they're good or not. They're barely playing their starters in the preseason. On the other side, I know Washington is a great defense. Still have questions about the offense. Giants, tons of questions. We never know what the offensive line. How do they replace Tomlin still on the D-line? Their secondary is good. At least on paper it is. Daniel Jones, does he take a step forward or does he keep being the same? So every team in this division has a flaw, has something that's just not going to work out for them, right? So, to me, I think the Eagles could win the division if they win enough division games. The problem for them is the outer division. And Nick from Brigantine says he expects them to win 6 games out of the division. And then 4 in the division. That was what he said earlier in the show. If you're going to win the division, you have to win a minimum of 4 games in the division, in my opinion. Because you got to win all 3 home games against your rivals. And then you got to find one of those games on the road to win. And I would assume that either at the Giants or at Dallas are probably the 2 best opportunities for you to get those wins. I think Washington is going to be way tougher than some people realize. I think that Washington's front 7 is extremely dangerous. I just don't know which version of Ryan Fitzpatrick shows up. Is it going to be the guy who wins you games in Miami, or is it the guy who chokes at the end of the season when he was with the Jets? I don't know which one you're going to get. And if he gets injured, Taylor Heineke doesn't really evoke a lot of faith, that's for sure. And I said with the Cowboys, listen, I'm not trying to diss on the Cowboys, but I'm keeping it real with you guys. Hard Knocks has been ridiculous. It makes me dislike the Cowboys actually more watching them on Hard Knocks because of how they're portraying them. I think Hard Knocks has exposed Mike McCarthy as the most pathetic coach trying to give speeches in the NFL. That dude tries to come off as interesting and exciting and all this stuff, but he's really not. Like, he gets up there, throws a couple F-bombs on to the team, and it's like, it doesn't do anything for me. Like, coaches like McCarthy think, if I throw a couple curse words out there, then my team knows I'm intense. I'm fired up. And it's like, nah, Mike, you still sound boring. McCarthy, you still sound a little disinterested. It sounds like you don't even believe your own rhetoric. I think that for the Cowboys, in order for them to be successful this year, Dak Prescott has to play the full season, or at least 16 to 17 games. And then I think the defense has to be at least league average instead of insanely bad like they were last year. I'm still not 100% sure about their secondary, but I think that Dexter Lawrence is healthy and he's good to go this year. Coming off of that back surgery, I think the Cowboys have some players. I think Micah Parsons can be a real stud for them. I think he could be a real stud for them. But you know what? I'm not sure about if the Cowboys can keep it all together, because I'm telling you guys, the more I consume Mike McCarthy, the less I believe in him. I believe in Dak. I believe in Zeke. I believe in those three studs at wide receiver and Cooper and Gallup and Lamb. And I believe in Micah Parsons. I think Dexter Lawrence, when he's healthy, he's a stud. But in Dallas, the coaching staff, I got a lot of concerns. You thought Jason Garrett was problematic? Mike McCarthy is about maybe 2 degrees above falling asleep worthy. So we'll see what happens in Dallas. A couple of messages coming in here into the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. Text board 609-403-0973. Priority messaging available through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Download for free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on YouTube and Twitter to get in on the conversation. Texter says, bold prediction. I think 2 NFC East teams will make the playoffs, and the Eagles will be one of them. That is a bold prediction, because I think that if in order for the Eagles and another team to make the postseason, and remember, there are 7 teams that make the playoffs now. All right, so let's assume that 2 teams come out of the NFC West. Whoever wins the division and whoever is the runner-up. Because between the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the 49ers, and the Rams, all 4 of those teams can definitely win the division, and you can make an argument for all 4 of them. So I'm going to work off that 2 of those teams make the division. So there's 2 teams in the playoffs right there. I assume if Brady is healthy, Tampa's in the playoffs. There's another team. Boom, in the playoffs. Rodgers is healthy, or at least plays the majority of the season. Packers in the playoffs. So there's your 4 teams right there. Whoever wins the NFC East, they're a playoff team. That's 5. So now you have 2 spots open for another team. So you're taking the teams that are in the NFC East, and they're going head-to-head with a potential 3rd team for the NFC West. If the Vikings can get everything figured out, because they had a ton of injuries on defense last year, and they're hoped to be healthier this year with all the depth they added to the team. Does New Orleans stay competitive with Jameis Winston at quarterback or Taysom Hill? Can Atlanta turn it around? These are all questions I don't have an answer for. But I feel like I can maybe project 5 teams as playoff teams. And that comes down to 2 slots. And I feel like if there's another team from the NFC East that could make it, they're competing with a 3rd team from the NFC West, the 2nd team in the NFC North, and potentially the 2nd team in the NFC South. It's not far-fetched. I'll believe when I see it, though. I haven't fully broken down the schedule for every team yet, so I can't tell you every team's schedule to really lay out how strongly I feel about if 2 NFC East teams can make it. Could it happen? Of course it could happen. I'm not going to deny that. I'm just going to say my faith in that happening is not extremely high. But hey, we've seen crazier things, right? Another message coming in over here. Croce texted in at 609-403-0973. Says, I don't understand why people think the Eagles are going to be so atrocious. They are not going to be in the hunt with every NFC East team. They are solid on both lines, as they don't get hurt every game, and it's arguably the most important part of any football team. The roster really isn't terrible. Jalen Hurts, the first-year head coach, is the only unknown. That's from Croce on the text board at 609-403-0973. Yeah, look, to me, I feel like if they're healthy, the offensive and defensive lines are arguably among the best in the conference. You could argue that the Eagles, if they don't have the best offensive line, they have one of the best offensive lines, either them or Dallas, right, in the division. And then the defensive line, to me, the only defensive front that's better than the Eagles in the division is Washington. So you arguably have one of the 2 best offensive and defensive lines in the division. So Croce is 100% right. As long as they're healthy and nobody gets hurt, they can play all the games and they're good to go. And you're right, the roster isn't terrible. The problem is, I think, Croce, there are people who look at the team last year and they think it's the same team when it's not. They're overlooking the fact that they added Anthony Harris and Eric Wilson and Ryan Kerrigan, and that they have drafted a running back who's going to complement what they already have with Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard. I think people are undervaluing what Devonta Smith brings to this team. He was the most productive wide receiver at Alabama over the last couple of years. And you could argue he may end up having the best career of the bunch of them, between Judy, Ruggs, himself, and all the other guys who've come out of Alabama over the last few seasons. And remember, on a team that had multiple first-round picks, he was still producing at a high level in pressure moments in college. So I think the addition of Devonta Smith, if he can continue to be productive like he was in college, I think that he can have a very, very good career in Philadelphia. And it may be a good enough career to rival, some of the best receivers in Eagles history, which is another article I wrote about over at 97.3 ESPN, where I ranked the 10 greatest Eagles wide receivers in franchise history. So I think Croce's right. I think that people assume they're going to be atrocious, but they're really not. The roster is not bad. And you're right. Jalen Hurts and Sirianni are the big wild cards. They're the big question marks. They are the two people that you look around, you're not fully sure about, but you feel like if it all lines up, this can be a better team than last year. And realistically, a lot of times when you change the coach and you change the quarterback, you are better the next year. It just goes as part of the package, right? So, listen, I tend to lean toward, as I explained earlier in the show, I tend to lean toward the over 6.5 line that's coming out of Vegas, okay? I tend to lean toward 7-8 wins for this team, because I think that there's no way they could be as injured as they were last year. That would be insane. To have that many injuries back-to-back years would be absolutely insane. And I think as long as Jalen Hurts does not turn into a turnover machine like Carson Wentz was last year, and he's efficient with the ball, which he showed himself to be, he'd rather throw the ball away than force the ball and throw an interception. So his completion percentage might not be as gaudy and as sexy, but I'd rather you throw the ball away than throw an interception. I'd rather you not take the sack and throw the ball away, I should say. I'd rather you make the smart play than the risky play. So at the end of the day, I feel like this Eagles team can be very interesting. Now, how interesting, how good, we're going to find out. Part of that will be tonight with the Eagles preseason game right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. By the way, remember I was telling you that Devonta Smith is expected to play tonight? Well, the Eagles Twitter account is showing off Devonta Smith's jersey at his locker. So it's almost like the Eagles Twitter account is trying to say, hey, he's playing tonight, or watch out, he might play tonight. I think that it's very interesting that they want to show that. The Eagles do things very purposefully. So don't be surprised if Devonta Smith plays tonight. Very, very interesting that they're showing that on Twitter. It's on the Eagles official Twitter account. Josh Hennig here, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. This hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Delaware Valley Acura Dealers. For great deals on Acura's award-winning lineup, shop online at DelValAcuraDealers.com. We'll talk more football coming up next with Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press. Covers the NFL for the AP. Get his thoughts on the Eagles preseason game tonight. Also his thoughts on the NFL's latest news and notes right here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN FM. 97.3 ESPN mobile app for all your Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, and high school sports coverage. Just download the app for free from the Apple App Store or from Google Play. You listen to the show anywhere you go in the world. And, of course, we are live as always on YouTube and Twitter, where Kyle Dubray is still banging the drum for the Milton Williams going to the Hall of Fame campaign over here. Milton Williams being in the third round doesn't mean anything. He starts listing guys in the third round and the fourth round. I know Terrell Owens and Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott with third-round picks. Kyle, hear me out just for a hot second before I go to this break. I'm not saying Milton Williams stinks, but I'm saying if you're going to compare him to Aaron Donald, that's extreme, man. Again, Aaron Donald had more tackles for loss in one season than Milton Williams had in his entire college career. Milton Williams had less sacks in his career than Aaron Donald had in one season at Pitt. Aaron Donald was a freak in college. I'm not saying Milton Williams is going to be a bad player. I'm just saying comparing him to Aaron Donald is extreme. That's all. I hope and pray that Milton Williams is as good as you think he's going to be, because then that means the Eagles are going to be in a position to be in the NFC Championship game. All right. All right, we'll get to Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press coming up next here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill. This is 97.3 ESPN.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
New Jersey car owners, stop what you're doing and come see AJ, the trade-in man, at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Cancel that service appointment. Let your tires go bald. Don't put another penny in that old car. The value of your current vehicle has skyrocketed, so cash in your vehicle now. Used car values are at an all-time high. Your car may be worth more than you think. New 2021 Nissan Frontier 4x4 truck. 0 due at signing. Lease $349 per month. Stuck in a loan or lease? We can get you released. We'll buy your car for cash, even if you don't buy a car from us. Worried about your credits? Don't sweat it. Get $3,000 back on every 2021 Nissan Murano and pay 0 interest for 60 months in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, or online at mattblattnissan.com. Negative equity will be refinanced in the new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR based on $1,667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. 36-month, 10,000 miles per year lease. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 9/6/21. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Thursday edition of the Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live as always on YouTube and Twitter. Just follow at 973 ESPN. NFL preseason week 2 kicks off tonight. Of course, Eagles are in action. Coverage begins right here at 6:30 on your home for Eagles football in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN. And joining us right now is the host of Faith on the Field, which you can hear Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. and the encore at 6:30 a.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press, NFL writer and reporter, joins us right now on 97.3 ESPN. Rob, how you doing today?
What's up, Josh? Happy Thursday, man.
It's a happy Thursday because football's on, man. That's why I'm pumped, man.
No doubt. You got a little bit of Eagles action tonight. Devontae Smith looks like he's going to be ready to go. Very excited to see what he could do out there. But most importantly tonight, Josh, no injuries. That's what we want to see.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I want to start because, the Tyree Jackson injury to me, Rob, is interesting because, last year the Eagles tried to slip a guy through waivers and it didn't work out. Noah Togiai got picked up by the Colts. And so I'm starting to wonder, what do the Eagles do with Jackson? Because do you just stick him on the IR for the year? Do you try to slip him through with an injury designation, try to place him, somewhere else after the deadline? Or do you put him on the roster and then put him on the 8-week injury IR? The Eagles got to figure out because this is a young man who's looked pretty good for them.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned. I know a lot of people are concerned that you can't slip him through waivers. But you got a guy, no matter how good we think he looked, right, in training camp, other teams weren't seeing Eagles training camp film on him. So he's still a project. He's still a quarterback trying to convert to tight end. And roster spots are hard to come by across the league. And I do believe you could slip him through waivers if they wanted to go that route. And it's unfortunate for the kid that he suffered this injury and he's going to be out an extended period of time because he did appear to be coming along nicely and giving the Eagles another option at that position, depth there. And we talked about him the other day, a big target, a big size, a guy who understands where he's got to be because he was a quarterback, and it's always helpful. I know Tim Tebow couldn't make that transition, and he's much older, significantly older than Tyree Jackson, but it helps to have played that position. We know with Greg Ward, he was a former quarterback turned wide receiver, and it just helps you running your routes and all of knowing coverages and knowing what a defense looks like. But it's too bad for him. However, it appeared that he had a future in the NFL, and his future looked bright, and we'll see how that plays out. But I do think that the Eagles would be able to get away with slipping him through waivers.
Well, part of the future should be on display today, as you mentioned, the expectations. Devonta Smith will play tonight. We're hoping to see more of Jalen Hurts tonight. And Rob, I find it interesting that Sirianni was very public when he came out, and he said, I want the young players in the preseason. I want these guys to get some rep action. This seems to be a very, very different approach in Nick Sirianni than what we saw from the previous coaching administration with Doug Peterson.
Yeah, and it makes sense though, Josh, right? Because Doug comes in here, wins a Super Bowl in year 2. You got established guys, you know what they can do. You just want to rest those guys and make sure that they're ready to go week 1 of the regular season. But in Nick Sirianni's case, it's a completely different situation. I mean, he's coming in here. He's a rookie head coach. He's got a bunch of unproven guys, some young guys who want to see what they can do. You're competing. He's preached competition since day 1, since he's been here. So you want to see these guys go out there and compete. Now, they had a couple of great days of practice against the Patriots. They'll do it again next week against the Jets. And I know we spoke about this before. Coaches take a whole lot more out of what they get in those joint practice sessions than what they do on Thursday nights or whatever night they do play those football games. So excited to see what they can do tonight. And I like Nick's approach. And I think Jalen will be out there a little bit longer. I'm not sure what game 3 next week will look like against the Jets, but I do look at tonight against the Patriots. It's a good test. Anytime you're playing a Bill Belichick coach team, you know they're going to be ready to go. You know they're going to be prepared. And this should be a really good test and an opportunity for us to see how far some of these guys have come along.
Rob, you mentioned the game 3 next week. For many teams, they're only playing 3 games. The only team that's playing 4 is the Cowboys and the Steelers. In your covering around the league, what is the reaction you're getting around the league right now from coaches and people around the league about how they view this preseason schedule?
Well, coaches want to play as many games as possible, right? Coaches will always tell you that they want to evaluate guys. They want the opportunity to see the roster bubble guys, see the practice squad guys, see the guys fighting for opportunities in the league. So they'll play 6 preseason, although that's a little crazy, which they used to do. Remember way back, but before our time, they used to play that. So coaches always want more football to evaluate their guys, but the players certainly are happy with 3, and they'd be happier with 2. So I think it's a happy medium that we've arrived at 3 games.
You have coaches like Sean McVay saying, I'm not putting Matthew Stafford out there at all, right? And then you have a coach like Sirianni. He's like, I want as many guys to play as possible. It seems like each coach has a completely different approach to handling the preseason. And I don't know if there's really a right answer, Rob, because all I can remember as long as I live is the 0-16 Lions went 4-0 in the preseason. I will never forget that. So to me, when it comes to the preseason, I can't judge a coach's analysis too much because I feel like I'm not in the building with them, watching the players, reading the tape.
Yeah, and the Ravens right now are on an 18-game winning streak in the preseason.
Yes.
They haven't lost a preseason game in a handful of years, but they haven't won a Super Bowl in that time span. So I really, like you, I don't care what a team does in the preseason. Records do not matter, not even a little bit. We can all look back at what Sam Bradford did against the Packers a few years ago, and what was it, 13 for 13 or something like that. He had an incredible performance, and everybody's hyped up about Sam Bradford, and we know how that played out. But yeah, in the case of Sean McVay, I don't fault him for not wanting to play Matthew Stafford because why would you want to put anything on film as far as a new quarterback in your offense? And he knows what Matthew Stafford can do. He's done it for a decade in Detroit. Let him get his work in those joint practices. And I'm not sure if the Rams were one of the teams today. There were several teams who had a lot of fights in those joint practices. There were 2 teams who cut off the joint practice because of their fights. It wasn't Tampa. Tampa had it with Tennessee, but they continued through the fighting. It may have been the Chargers. I know it was out on the West Coast. It may have been the Chargers or the Rams, but that's all you need Matthew Stafford to do. So I can understand his perspective and his point of view and why he would want to do that.
Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press joining us as is every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, at Rob Maaddi on Twitter. Rob, I want to ask you, I mentioned earlier in the show, 2 of the guys I'm watching for tonight I'm curious about are Teron Jackson and Kevon Wallace. And they're not big names, but they're 2 guys who were known for what happened to them in college. Kevon Wallace was a key to that Clemson defense. And then Teron Jackson, that Coastal Carolina defense became national attention when they shut down the BYU offense with Zach Wilson. So to me, you have 2 guys who are having to learn a defense in this environment in the NFL. What is your perspective on the young guys who have the success they have in college, then have to come into the NFL and prove themselves?
And I think that's the case with a lot of these guys, even a top draft picks, even if you're a top 10, top 15, top whatever you are, you have success in college doesn't translate to the NFL. It doesn't mean automatically you're going to come into the league and dominate. You have to prove yourself. So when you're a later round pick, when you're Wallace or Jack or whoever you may be, and you're a later round pick, you got to prove yourself even that much more. You know what I thought was really cool and interesting about Wallace this week is him talking trash to Cam Newton, like the swag that he has to be able to. You haven't done a damn thing in the NFL in your career. Cam Newton, say what you want about him. He's a former NFL MVP, right? And to call him a check down king and talk trash like that says a lot about the confidence that Wallace has. And some guys can go out there and that gets them hyped up and that gets them to play their game, puts a bullseye on his back, and Cam's not going to attack him. And it's a preseason game, so it's not going to matter much to Cam Newton. But I'll tell you what, there are people now around the league who see that, who hear that, and they'll approach him with just a little bit of an edge, right? They want to go out there and say, hey, I'm going to shut him up if he's going to talk trash like that to me. So I'm excited to see what Wallace can do, and Jackson and all of these young guys. But that in Wallace, you got a guy in a position of need for the Philadelphia Eagles, a position where you need someone to step up there in that secondary with what they have, the situation they have back there. And I hope, him coming out of Clemson and his connection to, we compared him and unfairly to Hall of Famer Brian Dawkins last year. And just the fact that they're friends and they have a relationship and it's kind of a mentor to him. And I've talked to Troy Vincent, who's mentored Wallace in the past too. And they're so high on this kid. They love his potential. They love who he is and the character he brings. And that to me is just going to allow him to be able to thrive at some point in the NFL.
You mentioned Cam Newton. What is your perspective on the quarterback situation in New England? Because Belichick started camp saying, hey, Cam's our starter, and we won't consider Mac until he does something for us to consider him. Well, if you believe all the voices on the outside of New England, they're saying Mac Jones should be the starter. But it seems like in the New England locker room, Belichick seems to be sticking with his guns for now.
Yeah, and it makes sense because you don't want to have to rush a kid too soon, too quickly. I don't know how well Mac Jones knows the offense right now. I don't know how well he understands what Josh McDaniel wants to do with the system there. And so in Cam Newton, you have a veteran, you have a guy who's proven, and although he's on the downside of his career, and he may very well be done at this point, but I don't think we can judge that off of just last week's preseason game. He didn't look great last year, but he was coming off injuries, and there's a lot that goes into it. So I think they can slowly work Mac Jones. You're going to see Mac Jones be the starting quarterback, I believe, of the New England Patriots before this season's out, because I don't think the Patriots are going to be a playoff team with or without Cam Newton. So therefore, at some point, you're going to give way, I would think, to the rookie. And I like the way he handled himself last week against the Washington football team. But again, it's one preseason game. It's against backups, reserves, guys who aren't going to make the team. Let's see what he does tonight against the Eagles, because the Eagles are a team that they got a lot to prove on the defensive side of the ball. And they're going to go out and get after them tonight.
It's funny because most of what you said could also be applied to Chicago Bears because of their starting quarterback and their backup quarterback. Hey, people said Justin Fields is the best young quarterback of week 1 of the preseason. And I just put my hand in my hand. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's one game. But you know what? It's Chicago's an interesting situation because Andy Dalton was doubling down to the media, saying it's my time and all this stuff. He's growing the beard out with a new look and everything. And Justin Fields is just going out there business as usual, doing his thing.
Yeah, and I went back and watched that game against Miami, and he had some moments there where it showed his inexperience, him being a rookie. And again, he's another guy who was going against – he didn't start that game, so Josh, he was going up against second stringers, third stringers, and he looked good. He had some success. There was the spin move where he fumbled, recovered his own fumble, but he moved the ball. He had a nice drive towards the end of the first half, a 2-minute offense that looked good. He had some poise. He showed his ability to move outside the pocket. What he could do is throwing on the run, and it's one preseason game. It's Andy Dalton's time right now, but I think it's going to be Justin Fields' time probably sooner rather than later, because you're not going to be building around Andy Dalton in the future in Chicago. This is going to be Justin Fields' team. And I would say maybe October or sooner that we'll see him as the starting quarterback. Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, to me, are going to be the two guys, the two rookies who are week one starters. Other than that, the other guys are going to have to slowly work their way into it.
Rob Maaddi, Associated Press, joining us here as he does each week on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, at Rob Maaddi on Twitter. Rob, when you were in Philadelphia, a guy that you covered very closely and you got to see firsthand was Carson Wentz. Well, in Indianapolis, according to Frank Reich, he's saying that Wentz is getting antsy, that he's trying to push the envelope on his rehab, that they're trying to tell him, man, you got to be patient and the focus on the mental side of things. I want to get your reaction to that, because we know Carson Wentz, the kind of mentality, the type of competitor that he is, and it seems like Reich is having to reel him back in a little bit.
Yeah, and that's exactly who he is. He's very competitive. He wants to get out there. He wants to play yesterday. Like, he's that kind of guy, and I don't fault him. I look back at the year he was coming back from the ACL injury, and I thought they should have forced him to sit out a couple extra weeks. He wasn't ready to come back, and that may or may not have contributed to whatever happened with his back when you're favoring or not feeling as comfortable coming back. He had a significant knee injury. It wasn't just an ACL. It was ACL, LCL, MCL. It was all that. So it was very significant. I think he rushed himself back because he wanted to be out there, and they let him do it. And I think Frank Reich is approaching this a smart way. Don't rush right now. It's not about week one. It's about week 18, 17, 19, 20, 21. It's about the postseason. So if you have to sit out 1 or 2 weeks early in the season, that's fine. Let's make sure you're ready, you're set, you're healthy, and you can go out there as close to, nobody's ever 100%, but as close to 100%. But when I hear that out of Frank Reich, it doesn't surprise me even a little bit. I know Carson. I know he wants to be out there. I know he's antsy. I know they got to reel him in. I'm sure the trainers are having to deal with him and him trying to push the limit and push it as much as he can to get out there.
I'm starting to wonder, you mentioned about what Carson Wentz did in 2018, how he's pushing to get out there. Is there a possibility that maybe Frank Reich was in Philadelphia in 2018 and not in Indianapolis, that maybe Reich could have reeled him in and maybe got him to sit out an extra game or two, maybe take care of himself a little bit more? Is it possible that Reich has Wentz's ear better than anybody else does?
Oh, it's very possible. Very possible. Those two have a very close relationship. And it's Frank is just so well respected, so well liked, so genuine. And so is Doug. Doug was that way too as well. But Carson and Frank got along very well. Doug and Carson got along very well, despite what some of the reports were that were just pushing a false narrative. But I think Frank and Carson's relationship is special. It's unique. They share a bond. They got the same favorite Bible verse, which is to those two guys, it's very important, because they're men of strong faith, and just to have that connection, to have that bond, it's really cool. So, you know what? That's an interesting point you bring up. If Frank was here in 2018, could he have kind of said, "Hey, let's hold off, Carson. Let's wait and make sure you're ready to go." But the Eagles weren't. The Eagles were okay with that. If you remember that season, those first two games, Nick Foles kind of struggled. He didn't play all that well. They were 1-1. And everybody was ready for Carson. I remember doing radio in Philly, and everybody's like, "That's it. Nick Foles was just a Super Bowl MVP one game, and this isn't who he is." I thought Nick should have played a few more games, but everybody was ready to put Carson in there, and it turned out the way it turned out eventually. And it's crazy how things have changed in such a short period of time.
You mentioned Men of Faith. Well, Faith on the Field this weekend. Of course, you are the host of it, you and your wife, Remy. Folks can hear it at 8 a.m. on Saturday, 6:30 a.m. on Sunday. Who do you got coming on this weekend?
Houston Texans wide receiver, one of the best and I think most underrated in the game, Brandon Cooks, is on the show. Brandon's had 5 1,000-yard seasons in the last 7 years, and he's done it with 4 teams, Josh. He's been with New England, New Orleans, the Rams, and now Houston. I remember when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, we all remember the hit. Malcolm Jenkins knocked Brandon Cooks out of the game, and before I went to the Eagles locker room, I went to New England's availability post-game and asked Tom Brady how significant of an impact it was losing Brandon Cooks in that game. That was a close football game, and the Eagles only stopped them the one time there at the end. And if Brandon Cooks plays that game, it could have been a different story. Tom Brady threw for 500 yards, and Cooks was out for almost 80% of the game. He might have thrown for 600 yards if Brandon Cooks was out there. But good for the Eagles. They won that Super Bowl. Brandon's a great dude. He's got a lot going on. We chat about his new coach, David Culley, a little bit about Deshaun Watson, Tyrod Taylor, and, of course, he's a man of strong faith, and we talk about that too as well.
Getting Faith on the Field, Saturday at 8 a.m., the encore presentation, Sunday at 6:30 a.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. He is Rob Maaddi, at Rob Maaddi on Twitter, AP NFL writer, and he joins us every Tuesday and Thursday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Rob, always appreciate you conversating with me, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you, Josh, man. You do a great job. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Josh Hennig here, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, this hour of the Bash being brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage in South Jersey for your next local and long-distance move. Clark's Moving and Storage is your first call. They are dependable and always show up. Visit them online at clarksmoving.net. We got one more segment to go, as we are less than an hour away from Eagles radio network coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. As the Phillies continue to lose, we have Eagles football to look forward to tonight. Mel Reese, Mike Quick on the call here on your home for Eagles football in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN. I'll give you the full update on the Phillies just completely dropping the ball right now in this game on the other side.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason tonight, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
Hit under center. Back, hit, and he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
Do you like saving money? Do you plan on staying in your house? If so, it's time to refinance your mortgage with Jim Malamut and Green Tree Mortgage, a trusted local lender for over 30 years. Save thousands just by refinancing to a lower rate. Home values are at all-time highs and interest rates are near all-time lows. So now is the time to cash out your equity to consolidate credit card bills or student loans and lower your monthly expenses. Or take cash out to fix up the house. Now is the time to refi. Don't wait. Give Jim and Green Tree Mortgage a call at 609-646-5555.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, wrapping up the show here on 97.3 ESPN FM. The 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Twitter. We got a couple messages to get here before we get out of here. Before we get there, the Phillies are losing 6-0. Yeah. Remember what I told you? It was 1-0. Yeah, it was 1-0. And you had this great game. You know, you were like, oh man, look at the Phillies. They're keeping up with the Diamondbacks. Maybe they can win this game. Then we get to the bottom of the 6th. Wheeler gets out of there. No runs. 1 hit. Get to the 7th. Bumgarner still shutting down the Phillies. Then the 7th inning comes around. Wheeler starts falling apart. Yeah. First, you had the double to center by Walker. Then you had the sac fly. Walker goes to third. Fielder's choice. And then Ahmed goes for the double. Ellis scores. Walker scores. 3-0. Bumgarner comes up, singles to left. Now it's 4-0. Rojas gets walked. Bumgarner scores. Then they take Wheeler out, bring in De Los Santos. By then, it was already toast. It was already done. You were already cooked. You left Wheeler in too long. You gave him too long of a rope to figure it out. And now you're down 6-0. And you're hoping that a Phillies offense that has scored 4 runs in 2 games is going to score 6 runs in an inning and a half against a guy who currently has how many pitches right now? 88 pitches in the 8th inning. This Phillies team frustrates me so much. It's insane. But you know what the good news is? We got football tonight. And I love football. Win or lose, I love football. I feel like there's nothing more frustrating than baseball. Because you know you should win. You know how you win. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure it out. But these players, apparently, there's a problem, and they're all stuck. All right, a couple more messages that came in. I want to talk with Rob. I want to get to before we get out of here because I always love hearing from you guys out there. Text board 609-403-0973. Croce follows up and says, let's be honest. Even last year with all the injuries and the bad football displayed on the field, they were legit 1-2 plays away from game-winning situations and getting 5 or 6 more games than this year. Listen, I said it earlier in the show, Croce. They could have won the Bengals game. They could have won the Washington game week 1. And they could have won the Steelers game. Those are the three that I point to. I say if those games are different, the season plays out differently. Those are the three losses that I blame on Carson Wentz. And I feel if Carson would have played differently and the Eagles would have handled things differently, you would have had 3 more wins. Another message over here on YouTube. Dave says Eagles 9 wins if stars are healthy. Listen, man, I think it's a small vocal minority who seems to hate the Eagles and be negative on them. I feel like the majority of Eagle fans, majority of objective football people say this team can win between 7 and 9 games. Thanks again to Rob Maaddi for joining the show. Always great conversation with him. Also, Adam Caplan, Keith Smith, Frank Klose. I'm Josh Hennig. Catch you tomorrow.
Hey, everybody. It's Mike Gill again from my guys over at PropSwap.com and the PropSwap app. Well, prop swappers all over continue to make money. And Luke Pergandy, right now, let's find out. How's the market been for Bryce Harper MVP and Zach Wheeler for Cy Young?
Yeah, Tatis Jr. coming back on Sunday and smacking 4 RBIs and 2